Chapter 3274. Of course, to Di Beichun, the pain of not being able to break through due to the suppression of his physique was far from comparable to the pain of seeing Bailey Hongzhuang sad. Recently, Bailey Hongzhuang had spent almost all of her efforts on him. In order to help him break through, Bailey Hongzhuang had put in a lot of effort. If Bailey Hongzhuang wasn't an alchemist, their current situation would be even worse. However, he also knew that it was precisely because of Bailey Hongzhuang's attainments in alchemy and medicine that she couldn't help him solve the problem of his physique. This was what made Bailey Hongzhuang feel the most pain. To be able to cure other cultivators, but not be able to do anything for the person you love. This was an indescribable pain for anyone. During this period of time, Di Beichun was in pain, and Bailey Hongzhuang was in pain as well. When they faced each other, the guilt in their hearts towards each other deepened. This was the worst thing. But now, Di Yujue's words gave him hope. Now that they had gathered all of the medicinal ingredients, they were only missing a portion of the tears of cold flame. Once they gathered all of the medicinal ingredients, they would no longer have to worry. Seeing Di Beichun so happy, Di Yujue couldn't help but chuckle. Even though he already knew how much Di Beichun cared about his wife, Di Beichun's wild joy still exceeded his expectations. Even so, Di Yujue felt happy for Di Beichun from the bottom of his heart. This was because when he saw Di Beichun at this moment, it was as if he saw himself more than 20 years ago. Being able to see others happy was also a very good thing. It's rare for you and me to be so fated. I'm naturally willing to help you. There's no need to be so grateful. It's as if I saved your life. Di Yujue laughed and waved his hand. Quickly sit down. Listening to Di Yujue's words, Di Beichun really wanted to say that Di Yujue's actions had indeed saved his life. This was a true life-saving grace. However, in the end, Di Beichun still didn't say these words, but he had already firmly remembered all of this in his heart. If there was a place where he could repay Di Yujue in the future, he was willing to go through fire and water without hesitation. Although Di Yujue said it lightly and looked extremely indifferent, Di Beichun knew that the value of the tears of cold flame was not simple. If it was really so easy to take it out, when Steward Jean went to find Steward Jean wouldn't have disagreed. Such a rare medicinal ingredient, Di Yujue gave it to him without any compensation. This already proved how important his position as a friend in Di Yujue's heart was. He was grateful from the bottom of his heart. In fact, not only was Di Beichun pleasantly surprised by Di Yujue's gift at this moment, Di Yujue would also be glad that he made such a decision in the future after knowing everything. Otherwise, he would really regret it for the rest of his life. Young Master Di, I'm really grateful to you. Di Beichun couldn't help but say it again, his pair of dark eyes full of gratitude. Seeing Di Beichun so persistent, Di Yujue couldn't help but laugh. Since you and I are already friends, you don't have to call me Young Master Di. My name is Di Yujue. Chapter 3275. After Di Yujue heard Di Beichun say his name, the smile in his eyes couldn't help but deepen. He already knew Di Beichun's name from Di Lao, and, at the same time, he also knew that Di Beichun had always considered himself as Di Beichun on Penglai Island. At this moment, when Di Beichun told him his name, he said his real name. This proved that Di Beichun also valued this friend of his. Being honest with him made him feel very satisfied. At least he didn't misjudge him. Come, let's continue drinking. Di Yujue raised his wine cup. It's been a long time since I met a friend who can drink to his heart's content. I didn't expect it to be a young man who is younger than me by more than 20 years. Following Di Yujue's words, Di Beichun's eyes couldn't help but reveal a hint of surprise. The Di Yujue in front of him was extremely young. He looked like he was only 20 or 30 years old, but according to Di Yujue, he seemed to be 40 or 50 years old. This was completely different from what Di Beichun thought before. He really couldn't see Di Yujue's age. What? Are you very surprised? Di Yujue looked at Di Beichun's slightly sluggish appearance and already understood Di Beichun's thoughts. He couldn't help but chuckle. In fact, Even he himself felt that it was very strange that he would get along so well with such a little guy. This is a bit out of my expectations. Di Beichun frankly admitted that he always felt that Di Yujue should be in existence similar to a big brother. He didn't expect that Di Yujue's age was already enough to be his elder. However, it was very difficult for people to associate Di Yujue with his real age. Di Beichun couldn't help but think of the rejuvenation pill. Could it be that Di Yujue also took the rejuvenation pill, so his appearance became like this? Ever since he came to Penglai Island, he already knew that there were many things that did not exist in the outside world here. It was not strange for Penglai Island to have the rejuvenation pill. That's nothing. As one's cultivation increases, one's appearance will remain unchanged. If one's breakthrough speed is fast enough, one will become younger and younger. This is also the reason why everyone has been pursuing the path of cultivation, not only for a longer lifespan, but also to maintain your youth for a longer period of time. I believe you will do the same in the future. Di Yujue smiled faintly. He was able to determine Di Beichun's age. To be able to cultivate to the 5th level of the Purple Realm at such a young age was already considered a genius. In the future, if you meet someone stronger, they might look the same age as you. Some might even look younger than you. But they're already old monsters who have cultivated for many years. So that's how it is. Di Beichun nodded with a sigh. According to Di Yujue's explanation, he shouldn't have taken the rejuvenation pill. It was only due to the increase in his strength that his appearance remained at the age of 20 or 30. Di Beichun couldn't help but think of Lan Yunxiao and the others. Lan Yunxiao and the others were already geniuses, but they were also unable to achieve this. Then how strong was Di Yujue's talent in cultivation to be able to achieve this? He couldn't guess, but he couldn't help but admire Di Yujue. This kind of person was a true expert. The path of cultivation is very long. You will slowly understand it in the future. This process from not knowing to knowing is also very interesting. Chapter 3276. Di Beichun and Di Yujue were drinking while listening to Di Yujue's words. They suddenly felt as if their horizons had been broadened. Previously, when he was in the outside world, he felt that as long as his cultivation reached the Purple Realm, he would not be far from the peak. However, according to Di Yujue, the path of cultivation was simply endless. It was impossible for one's cultivation to be unable to break through after reaching a certain level. It was just that as one's cultivation grew stronger, it would be harder to break through. However, there would always be a lack of geniuses among human cultivators. Just because you could not do it did not mean that others could not do it. There would always be a genius who would appear and break through the shackles of this realm. Perhaps it was because of this that cultivation was so popular and continued to develop. Di Beichun had a deep understanding of this. He also felt that Di Yujue's strength was much more tyrannical than his own. No wonder he could not sense Di Yujue's strength at all. That was because the difference in strength between the two of them was simply too great. For such a cultivator, even the slightest bit of unfavorable thoughts would be immediately discovered by the other party. This was the difference between them. Di Beichun had a faint feeling in his heart that Di Yujue's cultivation talent was definitely not inferior to his own. However, Di Yujue had lived for more than 20 years more than him. Di Beichun simply could not imagine what kind of cultivation he had now. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two had been waiting in the room for Di Beichun to return. However, Di Beichun had obviously been gone for a long time. Even though it was already past dinner time, they did not see Di Beichun return at all. Regarding this, the three of them were surprised and could only continue to wait. However, according to the waiter's description, Di Beichun seemed to have been drinking with the other party without leaving the private room. It seems that they really hit it off well. After chatting for so long, they still haven't finished talking. That's really amazing. Shangwan Yingying couldn't help but sigh. If it were her, she wouldn't have much to say to a cultivator she had just met. Seeing this, when Xiren and Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but laugh out loud. Don't think too much, just focus on your cultivation and wait for Beichun to return. Di Beichun didn't return to the house until it was late at night. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two couldn't help but stop cultivating and look at Di Beichun. Beichun, you're finally back. You took a really long time to eat this meal. Seeing that Di Beichun had returned, Ziren couldn't help but tease him. However, Di Beichun didn't answer when Ziren's words. Instead, he walked in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang noticed Di Beichun's serious expression, and her expression couldn't help but change a little. She took the initiative to ask what happened. "Wife, I have news to tell you," Di Beichun said in a deep voice. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Her pretty face was quietly covered with a touch of seriousness. Many thoughts instantly appeared in her mind. Could it be that Di Beichun and Di Yujue talked about the tears of glacial flame, and Di Yujue directly gave an impossible answer, cutting off all their hopes? What news? When she said this, Bailey Hongzhuang didn't notice the nervousness in her expression. "We will have the tears of glacial flame very soon," Di Beichun slowly said. Chapter 3277. The room fell into silence for a moment. Bailey Hongzhuang, Wen Ziran, Shang Wanning, and the three beasts all looked at Di Beichun with dull eyes. Their minds seemed to be unable to turn around for a moment, and they only thought that they had heard wrong. What did you say?" Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but ask. In that instant, she felt that she might have heard wrongly. Her voice was filled with uncertainty. "I said, we will soon have the tears of frostfire." Di Beichun's face broke into a radiant smile. In that instant, it was as if the dark clouds had dispersed and the sun had shone upon the earth. It was filled with warmth and dispersed the gloominess in everyone's hearts. "Is what you said true?" Even though she had already heard it twice and was certain that she had not heard wrongly, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but emphasize it again. This was because this surprise had come too suddenly. It was so sudden that it was hard to believe. Di Beichun did not find Bailey Hongzhuang's reaction strange. In fact, when he heard Di Yujue say that he would give the tears of frostfire to him, he could not help but ask again and again. "That's right, it's true." Following Di Beichun's words, the atmosphere in the room froze for a moment. However, in the next second, it completely exploded. "How can this be? Did the person you met agree to give us the tears of frostfire? What kind of request did he make? Why would he give us the tears of frostfire? Then when will he give us the tears of frostfire? Will he change his mind? How did you all discuss it?" In an instant, Bailey Hongzhuang, Wen Ziren, Shangwan Yingying, and the three beasts all spoke at once. This was a great news to them, and they were extremely curious about the process. Previously, when Di Beichun left, they felt that this was their only hope of obtaining the tears of frostfire. However, based on their understanding of Di Beichun, they thought that Di Beichun would not take the initiative to mention this matter. Hence, they did not have any hope. However, now that Di Beichun had returned and given them such a huge surprise, how could they not be surprised? Di Beichun looked at everyone's questions and did not know where to start. However, he could feel everyone's deep surprise and concern. He could not help but feel a wave of warmth in his heart. "You all have so many questions. Which one do you want me to answer first?" Di Beichun asked with a smile. Ziren waved his hand and said, "Forget it, we might as well not ask. You can just tell us the entire process." When he said this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying could not help but laugh. Di Beichun had been away for so long this time. If he wanted to tell them everything, how long would it take? However, if Di Beichun was willing to tell them, they would be more than happy to listen. "The friend I met is called Di Yujue. Coincidentally, he has the same surname as me." Di Beichun smiled faintly. "He asked me if I had taken a fancy to anything at the auction, and I told him about the tears of frostfire. In the end, he decided to give me the tears of frostfire. That's how it happened. That's it." Chapter 3278. Not only did Wen Ziren have this feeling, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying also had the same feeling. Previously, in order to obtain the tears of frigid heat, the road ahead was really difficult. They had almost exhausted all the methods they could think of, but the final result was still hopeless. According to their judgment, it should be very difficult to obtain the tears of frigid heat no matter what. After all, the Golden Flame auction house had always shown such an attitude, but Di Beichun only had a meal with the other party and easily obtained the tears of frigid heat. Wasn't this too unbelievable? Di Beichun nodded, his eyes clear and calm. Yes, that's right. I'm also speechless. Didn't the Golden Flame auction house say that the tears of frigid heat can't be sold? Even Steward Sheen was rejected. You only went over for a while and already got the tears of frigid heat. I'm really convinced. When Xiren couldn't help but give Di Beichun a thumbs up, but the smile on his face was getting wider and wider. This was really good news for them. Shangwan Yingying also gave Di Beichun a thumbs up. Beichun, you're the one who really hit it well. I was wondering why you suddenly met such a person. It turns out that all of this was a trick. They had worked so hard to solve the problem that they couldn't solve, but Di Beichun just met a friend and solved it. How could they not be happy? Bailey Hongshuang's face was always full of smiles. After hearing the news that Di Beichun brought back, she felt relaxed. After coming to Penglai Island for so long, her spirit had always been tense. Now, she could finally breathe a sigh of relief. Listening to the banter between Xiren and Shangwan Yingying, Di Beichun couldn't help but chuckle. When I met Di Yujue, I really didn't think so. When he mentioned it today, I also found it hard to believe. Looks like Beichun, you're truly blessed by the heavens. We've prepared for so long, but we didn't expect that in the end, there would be a light at the end of the tunnel. It didn't take any effort at all. Bailey Hongzhuang had a big smile on her face. This feeling of being suddenly enlightened was really delightful. Di Beichun nodded with a faint smile. Di Yujue is probably my benefactor. If it wasn't for Di Yujue's appearance, they didn't know when they would be able to resolve this situation. We really have to thank him this time. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were also shining with gratitude. Di Yujue's gift was tantamount to saving Di Beichun's life. This life-saving grace was enough for them to remember for the rest of their lives. By the way, Beichun, did he say when he would give you the tears of glacial flame? Xiren couldn't help but ask. He wasn't doubting Di Yujue's credibility. It was just that as long as this thing wasn't in his hands, he was still a little worried. What's more, with Di Beichun's current situation, it would be great if he could solve the problem of his physique a day earlier. If there's no accident, he should send the tears of glacial flame tomorrow. Di Beichun said slowly. He remembered that before Di Yujue left, he had specially said that he would arrange for someone to send the tears of glacial flame tomorrow. Chapter 3279. After returning to the Golden Flame auction house, Di Yujue quickly passed down the news and ordered people to deliver the tears of frostfire to Di Beichun the next morning. When Manager Jean heard Di Yujue's order, he couldn't help but be stunned. Previously, Di Lao had done so many things, but he still couldn't sell the tears of frostfire. Now, Di Yujue actually said that he wanted to give the tears of frostfire to Di Beichun. This was too unexpected. However, Manager Jean didn't dare to neglect Di Yujue's order. Di Yujue was Di Lao's master, so he was completely his god. No matter what Di Yujue said, he had to complete it immediately. However, after arranging this matter, Manager Jean still decided to tell Di Lao about this matter. Otherwise, it wouldn't be good if Di Lao took the initiative to ask him about it in the future. After Di Lao found out about this matter, he was very surprised in his heart. However, he didn't say anything and just let Manager Jean do it. As long as it was Di Yujue's order, he never asked for the reason and only followed it. The next day, not long after Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three left their cultivation, there was a series of knocks on the door. As soon as the door was opened, everyone saw a figure that surprised them. This person was none other than Golden Flame Auction House's Inya. May I ask which one of you is young Master Di? Inya asked with a smile. I am. Hearing this, the smile on Inya's face widened and she said, Young Master Di, my master asked me to deliver the tears of frostfire. In the next second, a brocade box appeared in Inya's hand and she directly handed it to Di Beichun. Di Beichun took the brocade box and opened it to see a crystal-clear tears of frostfire inside, emitting an alluring fragrance. When they saw the tears of frosty flame, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's eyes lit up. Even though they already knew that Di Yujue would send someone to deliver the tears of frosty flame, they could not help but feel excited when they saw it with their own eyes. Young Master Di, you can check it. If there's no problem, I'll take my leave first. Inya always had a faint smile on her face. When she received this task, she was very surprised. The treasure that was auctioned off at a sky-high price was now given to a young cultivator by her mistress. She was really curious about who this cultivator was. Please help me convey my thanks. I will. After Inya left, Di Beichun closed the door. Then, the four of them looked at each other and laughed. Their laughter gradually spread, and everyone felt relaxed. Beichun, Golden Flame Auction House actually sent Inya to deliver the item. It shows how important you are to Di Yujue. Although they did not know much about Golden Flame Auction House, they knew that as the auctioneer of Golden Flame Auction House's large-scale auctions, Inya's status was definitely not low. Di Beichun's eyes gradually changed. He was very clear about this point. They were just strangers who met by chance, but Di Yujue actually helped him. He only hoped that he would have the opportunity to repay Di Yujue in the future. However, it was obvious that with his current strength, he could not help Di Yujue in any way. Chapter 3280. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and said, I will start concocting the medicine to change the cursed body in a moment. If there are no problems in the process, then it can be changed. In her previous life, she had spent a lot of time researching the method to remove the cursed body. However, the final result was still very satisfying. She believed that as long as she could successfully concoct this pill, then all the problems would be solved. That's great. As long as the problem with Beichun's body is solved, we can relax in the future. Shangwan Yingying could not help but let out a sigh of relief. Ever since they arrived at Penglai Island, they had always felt a sense of urgency. Because they did not know when Di Beichun would fall into a coma, they had always been in a race against time. As long as Di Beichun could keep his life, then there were many things that they did not need to be so anxious about. Everything could be carried out in an orderly manner, and they did not need to worry about any uncertainties that might arise at any time. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. That's right. You guys go and rest first. I will go into the chaos ring to concoct the pill. There will be no one to disturb me there. All right, then you have to work hard. Shangwan Yingying smiled. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded gently, then turned around and was about to enter the chaos ring. However, just as she was about to enter, Di Beichun grabbed her hand. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but look surprised. She looked suspiciously at Di Beichun and raised her eyebrows, asking silently, Don't give yourself too much pressure. Di Beichun gazed at Bailey Hongzhuang. His deep and handsome eyes were filled with tenderness and concern. It's all right. He was very clear that no matter how powerful an alchemist was, there was still the possibility of failure when refining pills. Even if they gathered all the medicinal ingredients, there was no guarantee that there would be no problems during the process of refining pills. They were all confident in Bailey Hongzhuang's alchemy skills, but sometimes being too confident was a burden for Bailey Hongzhuang. Hearing Di Beichun's words, the corners of Bailey Hongzhuang's lips slowly raised, and a bright light flashed at her eyes. I understand. It was only after Bailey Hongzhuang entered the chaos ring that her expression turned serious. Gathering the medicinal ingredients was only the first step, and refining the pill was also an extremely crucial step. The pressure in her heart was naturally not small. She knew very well that they only had this one chance. If they failed this time, it would be almost impossible for them to gather all the ingredients again. Even if it was possible, Di Beichun's physical condition would not allow them to have more time to gather all the ingredients. Therefore, she had to succeed in refining the pill this time. If she made a mistake, she could lose Di Beichun completely. Just thinking about this possibility made Bailey Hongzhuang feel a little suffocated. This pressure was not something that an average person could feel. She understood that even if she failed in refining the pill, Di Bei-chun would not care. However, if that happened, she would never be able to forgive herself. Sitting in front of the pill furnace, Bailey Hongzhuang did not immediately start refining the pill. Instead, she sat quietly and calmed her emotions. Chapter 3281. After Bailey Hongzhuang left, Di Bei-chun and Wen Xiren looked at each other. They weren't as calm as before. Right now, the most important thing was Bailey Hongzhuang. As long as this step was completed, everyone would be happy. If not, they would have to start all over again. Did my words just now give Hongzhuang too much pressure? Shang Ying's face was full of guilt. She was so focused on the herbs that she had finally gathered, but she forgot that there was a certain risk in refining pills. Part of the reason for this was that she believed in Bailey Hongzhuang's alchemy skills too much. When Xiren glanced at Shang Ying helplessly, his Ying was good at everything, but she always spoke without thinking. She spoke without thinking clearly, so she often regretted it. It's okay, Di Bei-chun smiled. Hongzhuang knows that you didn't mean it that way. I really spoke too fast. Shang Ying patted her head in annoyance, but I still believe that Hongzhuang will be able to refine it. She is the most powerful alchemist I have ever seen. Even an alchemist like Chu Feihu wasn't Bailey Hongzhuang's opponent. If Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't refine this pill, then it would be even more impossible for others. When Xiren nodded, I also believe that Hongzhuang will be able to refine it. It took us so long to gather all the ingredients. God will definitely be on our side. The three of them looked at each other and smiled. However, no matter how confident they were, they couldn't help but feel a trace of worry in their hearts. Everything was possible. Before the real result came out, none of them could be sure of the real answer. Therefore, they could only wait anxiously. Golden Flame Auction House. Di Yujue packed his things early in the morning and prepared to leave for the outside world. However, before he left, he still went to see Di Lao. Di Lao had watched him grow up since he was young. However, after that incident, Di Lao had stayed on Penglai Island and didn't return to his family. Di Yujue also thought highly of this old man who had always been loyal to him. Young master, are you preparing to leave today? Seeing that Di Yujue had come to say goodbye to him, Elder Di couldn't help but ask. That's right. There's no time to lose. I'd better confirm it as soon as possible. Hearing this, Elder Di nodded his head. You're right. This matter is of great importance. The earlier we go, the earlier we can confirm it. If it really is the young master, that would be great. I hope so. A glimmer of hope appeared in Di Yujue's eyes. He also hoped that his trip this time would not be in vain. Over the years, he had been disappointed many times, but each disappointment brought him great pain. This pain would continue to stack. Every time it happened, the pain would increase. If this continued, even Di Yujue's strong heart would not be able to bear it. All right, young master, I heard that you gave the tears of frigid frost to Di Bei-chun. Elder Di thought for a moment and asked the question in his heart. Di Yujue nodded. That's right. Is there a problem? No. Elder Di waved his hand. I'm just curious as to why Di Bei-chun needs the tears of frigid frost. He asked for it for his wife. Di Yujue said indifferently. Hearing Di Yujue's answer, Elder Di completely dispelled the guess in his heart. Chapter 3282. Elder Di originally thought that Di Bei-chun was looking for the tears of frosty flame for himself. However, if he was looking for his wife, then no matter what the reason was, it had nothing to do with them. This was because they were looking for a man, not a woman. Di Yujue chatted with Elder Di for a while before leaving. With Elder Di in charge of the Golden Flame Auction House, there was nothing to worry about. Chaos Ring. After Bailey Hongzhuang calmed herself down, she began to refine the pill wholeheartedly. Calmly, she threw away all distracting thoughts and completely released the pressure in her heart. She knew very well that the more nervous she was during the process of refining the pill, the greater the possibility of problems occurring. Therefore, she had to refine the pill with a calm heart. Otherwise, once she was distracted, it was very likely that the pill refinement would fail. After all, the level of this pill was not low. With her current alchemy skills, she was just barely able to refine it. Therefore, she could not do as she pleased as she usually did. Stock after stock of medicinal herbs were placed into the pill furnace by Bailey Hongzhuang. The entire chaos ring was silent. Other than the slight sound of the medicinal herbs being extracted, no other sounds could be heard. Bailey Hongzhuang's mental strength was constantly monitoring everything in the pill furnace. Fortunately, with the help of the profound ice fire, the difficulty of refining the pill was greatly reduced. Even so, the difficulty of refining the pill was still not small. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang entered the chaos ring to refine the pill, Di Beichen and the other two did not have the heart to cultivate properly. After all, this matter was of great importance. It was not easy to concentrate on it, and even meditate was not an easy thing to do. Therefore, the three of them simply gave up on cultivating and stayed in the room to wait for Bailey Hongzhuang's results. This wait lasted for a long time. When Bailey Hongzhuang walked out of the chaos ring, Di Beichen and the other two's gazes almost immediately focused on Bailey Hongzhuang. However, the three of them did not say anything. They only observed Bailey Hongzhuang's expression. If the refinement failed, they didn't want to give Bailey Hongzhuang more pressure and pain. Bailey Hongzhuang's face was expressionless. After noticing the cautious expressions of the three, she could not help but laugh. Her voice was filled with excitement. It's a success. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Di Beichun, Wen Ziren, and Shangwan Yingying couldn't help but stand up and cheer. Their youthful faces were brimming with joy. Hongzhuang, you're amazing. Shangwan Yingying took Bailey Hongzhuang's hand and jumped up. I knew you would be fine. Haha, the problem that we were most worried about has finally been solved. I no longer have to worry about you suddenly leaving us one day. Ziren patted Di Beichun's shoulder. His eyes were red. Back then, Di Beichun had suddenly collapsed and showed no signs of waking up even after using many methods. It had really shocked everyone. He had always treated Di Beichun as his own brother. He had always felt that this fellow was abnormally lucky and would definitely live longer than him. This was something that he could not accept. Now that he knew that he was finally safe and sound, he could finally relax. Chapter 3283. A single word of thanks contained all of Di Beichun's gratitude and affection. Men were not good at expressing their emotions, so it was fine as long as they understood. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying could no longer hold back their tears. Too much pressure and tension had been completely released at this moment. We must not go home until we're drunk tonight. After his excitement, Ziren could not help but burst into laughter. It would be inappropriate if they did not celebrate such a good day. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others smiled and nodded when they heard Ziren's suggestion. Today was indeed an excellent day for them. That night, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others finally had a good night's sleep. This was the first time they had slept so well ever since Di Beichun's cursed body had acted up. They felt as if a heavy burden had been lifted off their shoulders, and they slept very soundly. The next day, after a night's rest, Di Beichun's essence, energy, and spirit had recovered very well. He immediately entered the chaos ring with Bailey Hongzhuang. Since all the preparations had been completed, it was naturally best to resolve this hidden danger of his body as soon as possible. At the same time, they were also looking forward to seeing how different Di Beichun's body would be after the transformation. After entering the chaos ring, Bailey Hongzhuang handed the pill to Di Beichun and said, I only have one experience of helping to transform the cursed body, so I can't guarantee that it's completely correct. Di Beichun nodded and smiled faintly. I understand. According to my previous experience, you will feel an extremely great power after consuming this pill. It will feel as if your body is burning, and it will be extremely painful. This process will definitely be extremely difficult because the transformation of the physique itself is a very difficult matter. Borrowing the power of the pill to completely transform your cursed physique will definitely be a complete transformation. You have to be mentally prepared. Bailey Hongzhuang stared at Di Beichun. Part of the reason why she had such a deep impression of the cursed body was because of the pain of the transformation. However, she believed that after enduring such pain, the transformation of a cultivator would definitely be earth-shattering. This pain may exceed your imagination. Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but emphasize again. Di Beichen smiled when he saw how worried Bailey Hongzhuang was. He said, "Wife, don't worry. No matter what kind of pain it is, I can endure it." Compared to the pain of leaving Bailey Hongzhuang, what was any other pain? To Di Beichen, there was nothing more painful than leaving Bailey Hongzhuang. As long as he could stay by Bailey Hongzhuang's side, he could endure any kind of pain. Seeing how confident Di Beichen was, Bailey Hongzhuang recalled how Di Beichen had risked his life in the oceanic world. She knew very well that Di Beichen's willpower had always been extremely tenacious. Perhaps his concern had caused him to lose his mind. "Then we can begin now." Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled into a smile, and her eyes became unusually determined. "Good luck." In the next moment, Di Beichen placed the pill into his mouth without any hesitation. The pill melted as soon as it entered his mouth. Di Beichen only felt a scorching power explode from his esophagus and spread all the way down. Wherever it passed, it seemed to bring with it a thick flame. His body felt as if it was burning. Chapter 3284. This was an extremely painful feeling. Di Beichen only felt a flame rising from his dantian, burning every inch of his blood, muscles, bones, and skin. He closed his eyes tightly, still persisting in operating the cultivation method, because he wanted to let this energy flow to every part of his body. Only in this way could he complete the real transformation. Bailey Hongzhuang saw Di Beichen's painful appearance not long after taking the pill, and couldn't help but have a trace of worry in her eyes. This pain was extremely terrifying when she saw that cultivator endure it. No matter how strong his willpower was, it would not be easy for him to endure it. In just a short time, Di Beichen's forehead was already oozing with large beads of sweat, and his face quickly turned pale due to the pain. He frowned, resisting the bursts of pain coming from his body. Seeing this scene, Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but tightly intertwine her hands. Unfortunately, she couldn't help Di Beichen when he was enduring such pain. All of this could only be endured by Di Beichen himself. The more thoroughly this heat burned his body, the more powerful his body of heaven's will would be. This could be said to be a situation where danger and opportunity coexisted. As long as Di Beichen could hold on, it would be extremely beneficial to him. Bailey Hongzhuang quietly guarded Di Beichen's side. This was the only thing she could do. For Di Beichen at this moment, every minute and every second was extremely unbearable. He only felt that his blood was about to dry up under this heat, and his throat was so dry that it was about to smoke. However, he also found that when his blood boiled to a certain level, some new power would emerge from his body. If he guessed correctly, this should be the power of the body of heaven's will. Different from the power in his body, it was more clear and pure. This power had a faint coolness, like a clear spring in the heat. Although it was very little, it gave Di Beichen a chance to breathe. As the heat spread wider and wider, Di Beichen's pain became more and more intense. His face was as pale as paper, and his body was on the verge of collapsing. It was as if he didn't know when he would completely faint. However, Di Beichen still retained a trace of consciousness. He must not let himself faint. Once he fainted, all his efforts would be in vain. They had gone through untold hardships to reach this step, so how could they fail because of him? Therefore, Di Beichen bit his lips, and blood flowed out from between his teeth. The sweet taste of blood allowed him to maintain his consciousness. He could not disappoint his wife, because he wanted to always be by her side. In this kind of torture and pain, time gradually passed. Bailey Hongzhuang paid attention to Di Beichen's situation. She found that although Di Beichen's breath was extremely weak, it was still abnormally strong. This kind of time was not only a kind of torture for Di Beichen, but also for Bailey Hongzhuang. In the entire hall, only Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were left, but neither of them made a sound. Di Beichen gritted his teeth and didn't let out a groan. Looking at Di Beichen like this, Bailey Hongzhuang's admiration for him grew even stronger. Chapter 3285. Di Beichen did not know how much time had passed. He only felt that he was on the verge of collapsing from the pain. Every time he found it hard to hold on, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice and smile would appear in his mind. Then, he would continue to persevere. It was as if his body no longer belonged to him. Under such perverted torment, his ability to endure pain seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. Unknowingly, a day and a night had passed. When the burning sensation in Di Beichen's body had completely dissipated, he could not help but open his eyes. He only smiled at Bailey Hongzhuang before he could no longer control himself and fainted. The moment Di Beichen fainted, Bailey Hongzhuang quickly rushed to Di Beichen's side and supported his collapsed body. After taking Di Beichen's pulse, Bailey Hongzhuang found that although Di Beichen's breathing was weak, his life was not in danger. He had only fainted due to excessive overdraft. He only needed to recuperate for a while to recover. However, after a careful examination, Bailey Hongzhuang also found that the power of the cursed body that had been suppressing Di Beichen's cultivation had quietly dissipated as if it had never existed. After confirming this, Bailey Hongzhuang could not help but cry with joy. Success! They had finally succeeded. The hidden danger of Di Beichen's cursed body had completely disappeared from today onwards. His body would no longer be a burden to his cultivation. On the contrary, the brand new mandate of heaven would help Di Beichen reach a higher peak. Even though the process was extremely painful, it was all worth it for this result. When Ziren and Shangwan Yingying had been waiting expectantly for Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen to come out. However, they still had some worries in their hearts. They had been silently praying that things would go smoothly and that there would be no problems. However, when Bailey Hongzhuang brought Di Beichen out, they saw that Di Beichen had already fallen into a coma. They could not help but be shocked. What's wrong with Beichen? Ziren quickly helped Bailey Hongzhuang place Di Beichen on the bed. He could not help but frown when he saw Di Beichen's pale face. Hongzhuang, is Beichen all right? Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head slightly with a relaxed smile on her face. It's all right. We succeeded. Beichen is just exhausted. He only needs to rest for 2 days. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's answer, when Ziren and Shangwan Yingying finally relaxed, their faces revealed a comfortable smile. We were scared to death. We thought that something had gone wrong. Fortunately, everything went smoothly. Shangwan Yingying patted her chest and breathed a sigh of relief. Bailey Hongzhuang also sat limply beside Di Beichen. She had not done anything for the past day and night. She had only been watching over Di Beichen. However, she still felt a sense of exhaustion. She had been too nervous. We could be completely relieved now. Bailey Hongzhuang's face revealed a bright smile. Even though her face was somewhat pale, her pair of black eyes were shining brightly. Ziren glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang and said, You've worked hard for the past 2 days. Yingying and I will go to the next room first. You and Beichen should rest well. Call us if you need anything. Chapter 3286. 2 days later, Di Beichen slowly opened his eyes. He felt a wave of soreness in his body, and the memories in his mind were slowly coming back. He could not help but recall the pain he had been immersed in. His heart was still filled with lingering fear. In comparison, although his body was still aching faintly, compared to his previous situation, this was completely heaven. Beichen, you're awake. Noticing that Di Beichen had woken up, Bailey Hongzhuang's face quickly lit up with a joyful smile. When Di Beichen saw Bailey Hongzhuang's smiling face, his extraordinarily handsome face broke into a smile as well. Wife, how do you feel now? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Bailey Hongzhuang asked with concern. Di Beichen smiled and shook his head. I'm fine. Aside from a little soreness in my body, there's no other discomfort. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang also relaxed. Your body is a little sore because you've used up a lot of energy. Your body hasn't fully recovered, but you'll be fine very soon. Then, is there a problem with my physique? There was a trace of worry in his clear and serene eyes. Di Beichen only remembered that he had been trying his best to hold on. In the end, he had still fainted. He was not sure how his physique had changed. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile gradually widened as she said, "Don't worry, the cursed body no longer exists. You're now a brand new body of the mandate of heaven." Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen's eyes flashed with ecstasy. This was undoubtedly the best news to him. In the next second, Di Beichen pulled Bailey Hongzhuang into his arms. His handsome face bloomed with a joyful smile. He finally did not have to worry about not being able to accompany Hongzhuang for long before leaving. He could still keep his promise and stay by Hongzhuang's side. Bailey Hongzhuang also knew that Di Beichen was feeling complicated and excited. She hugged Di Beichen tightly with both hands. Their hearts were tightly intertwined. They had been worried and afraid for so long. Fortunately, this final result had given them a satisfactory answer. The two of them were immersed in this embrace. Neither of them spoke because they knew each other's feelings very well. When Ziren and Shangwan Yingying found out that Di Beichen had woken up, they immediately went downstairs to order a sumptuous meal. After experiencing this incident, this feeling was similar to surviving a great disaster. "Beichen, you must be hungry after exhausting so much energy." Ziren looked at Di Beichen with a smile. He rarely saw Di Beichen so exhausted. Di Beichen, who did not feel anything at first, realized that he was hungry after hearing Ziren's words. It was as if he had not eaten for a long time. "Haha, I didn't expect you to know me so well." Di Beichen laughed heartily. Now that all the hidden dangers had been resolved, his smile became even more brilliant. It was no longer as difficult to reach his eyes as before. "It's not that I know you well," Hongzhuang told us. Ziren spread out his hands. "The transformation of your physique has consumed all the energy in your body. So we've prepared a very sumptuous meal for you. Don't stand on ceremony. Eat more, haha." Hearing this, Di Beichen glanced at Bailey Hongzhuang. The corners of his lips curled into a devilish smile. "My wife has always been so understanding." Chapter 3287. After solving the problem of the cursed body, Di Beichen was surprised to find that the speed at which he absorbed elemental energy was much faster than before. Previously, due to the suppression of the cursed body, the absorption of elemental energy in the air was very small even if he used his cultivation method. He could only rely on spirit stones to maintain a good cultivation speed. However, compared to other cultivators, it was much worse. If he was in his previous cultivation state, with the help of spirit stones, his cultivation speed would be much faster than before. Unfortunately, he was dragged down by the cursed body. Because of this, not only was it extremely difficult for him to break through, but his cultivation speed was also completely incomparable to Ziren and the others. However, at this moment, Di Beichen found that he was full of affinity with the elemental energy in the air. He only needed to use his cultivation method. He did not even need to deliberately attract the elemental energy. The elemental energy would naturally enter his body along with his breathing. Di Beichen had never felt this feeling before. Even though he had an excellent foundation in the past, he had never experienced such a feeling of cultivation. Compared to that, his current cultivation situation was completely smooth and easy. Di Beichen could not help but open his eyes and enter the cultivation state again. After discovering that he was indeed in this state when he cultivated, his face could not help but be filled with joy. His cultivation speed was several times faster than when he was in the cursed body. This kind of experience was simply too heaven-defying. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two sat at the table and had been paying attention to Di Beichen's situation. When Ziren and Bailey Hongzhuang did not know anything about the heavenly mandate body. Although Bailey Hongzhuang knew a little about it, she was not very clear. After all, she was only an alchemist in her previous life. She wholeheartedly studied alchemy. She did not pay much attention to the changes after the transformation. "Beichen, how do you feel? Is there anything special about this heavenly mandate body?" After seeing Di Beichen exit his cultivation state, Xiren could not help but ask the question in his heart. To be honest, he had never heard of such a physique before. Di Beichen's eyes flashed with a strong light of amazement, and he nodded in front of everyone's expectant eyes. My current cultivation speed is several times faster than when I had the curse body. Even if the curse body hadn't flared up, I'm afraid my cultivation speed would have been twice as fast. As Di Beichen's voice fell, Xiren and Shangwan Yingying were completely dumbfounded. His cultivation speed is actually so fast. Xiren's eyes widened. Although he did not know what Di Beichen's cultivation speed was after being suppressed by the cursed body, he was very familiar with Di Beichen's cultivation speed in the past. If it was 2 times faster than before, then it was truly heaven-defying. Di Beichen nodded, not to mention when Xiren. Even he felt that this matter was too unbelievable. However, he had repeatedly confirmed that his cultivation speed had really reached such a level. This was really a big surprise for him. Bailey Hongzhuang's smile gradually widened. Her beautiful black and white eyes bloomed with a brilliant luster. The heavenly mandate body was originally known as one of the most suitable physiques for cultivation. Any cultivator who had the heavenly mandate body had achieved great success in cultivation. Chapter 3288. Once successful, it would be a complete transformation. Unfortunately, most people would be suppressed when they had the cursed body. However, this was how the world worked. How could one see the rainbow without experiencing the wind and rain? Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen and the other 2 sighed in their hearts. Speaking of which, Di Beichen's transformation was not easy to come by. As long as there was even the slightest deviation, the only outcome would be death. Fortunately, the god of luck was always on their side. Not only did Di Beichen resolve the suppression of the cursed body, but he also successfully transformed into the body of destiny. In the future, they could look forward to Di Beichen's development. Beichen, your transformation is really amazing. Xiren gave Di Beichen a thumbs up. Then, a helpless expression appeared on his face. Previously, you were suppressed by the cursed body. My cultivation could not surpass yours by much. Now that you've transformed into the body of destiny, I'm afraid I'll be left behind by you again soon. Without waiting for Di Beichen to speak, Shangwan Yingying could not help but chuckle. You're always number 2. You might as well stop being so stubborn. After so many years, when have you not been like this? However, as long as you can keep up with Beichen's pace, it's already good enough. Yingying, you can't always undermine me like this. Xiren revealed a helpless expression. His Yingying was a professional at undermining him. Di Beichen smiled faintly and raised his eyebrows. Yingying is speaking the truth. But this is also good. I've been chasing after you for so many years. Suddenly surpassing you makes me feel uncomfortable. I'm more used to being number 2. Xiren shrugged. If it was compared to others, he naturally would not be willing to accept the status of number 2. However, the other party was Di Beichen. The situation was different. Previously, Di Beichen was unable to increase his cultivation. Although he had surpassed Di Beichen, he had never felt the slightest bit happy. On the contrary, he had always been worried. Now, Di Beichen's cultivation would soon surpass his, but he didn't care at all. On the contrary, he felt relaxed. Bailey Hongzhuang observed Xiren's behavior and understood the brotherly love between Xiren and Di Beichen. Only true brothers would have such feelings. By the way, now that the problem of Beichen's physique has been solved, the most important thing for us to do in Penglai Island has also been accomplished. I think we should quickly send this news back, right? Her black phoenix eyes flashed with a bright light, and Bailey Hongzhuang couldn't help but think of her family waiting outside for their news. Back then, they chose to leave without saying goodbye in order not to burden their family. Presumably, after they left, Mu Lingbing and the others must have been burning with anxiety. However, they had no choice but to do so. Now that the problem of Di Beichen's physique had been solved, everyone could finally relax. Naturally, they had to send this good news back to prevent their family members from continuing to worry about them. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Di Beichen nodded. Indeed, Master and the others must be worried about us every day. The last time we left, I'm afraid that everyone's hearts have been hurt. If we can bring this good news back, they will be completely relieved. Chapter 3289. Bachin looked at Xiren and said, "What do you mean? Based on the situation before we came, we should have sent this news back earlier. However, this trip will take a lot of time." Xiren frowned. Previously, they had spent a lot of time just coming to Penglai Island from the outside world. If they went back now and came back, they would waste all their time on the road. Moreover, they had seen too many cultivators with strong cultivations. They knew very well what they were lacking. Wasting time was not a good thing. "That's true." Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. "However, we have to find a way to send this news back. Why don't we try the Demon Refining Tower first? Regardless of whether we can succeed or not, at least we've tried it. This way, as long as we save some spirit stones, we don't have to rush back immediately. After all, whether we cultivate in the sect or on Penglai Island, it's the same. What do you think?" "I think Xiren is right. Since we've been on Penglai Island for so long, we might as well finish what we came here to do before going back. After we go back, we can stay for a while. Otherwise, it will be troublesome to travel back and forth." Shangguan Ying expressed her support. If they returned to the Demon Refining Tower after a trip and then returned after the Demon Refining Tower, then they would spend too much time on the road. Although Penglai Island is very big, the Demon Tower is the most important thing to us. The other things are not attractive to us," Xiren said again. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Bachin could not help but look at each other and then nodded. They also felt that Xiren's words were very reasonable. "In that case, let's go to the Demon Tower first. We can only let our family worry for a while." Bailey Hongzhuang sighed. Her heart was filled with regret, but she believed that her family was strong. Although they were worried about her and Bachin's departure, it would not be a blow to them. "If we go back after our strength increases, they will be very happy," Shangguan Ying comforted. Now that they had finally broken through to the 5th level of the Purple Realm, they finally had the chance to challenge the Devil Refining Tower. If they left just like that, it would be a pity. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and a smile appeared on her face. "Indeed, we have to take advantage of this opportunity to improve ourselves. Not only that, we have to find a way to obtain more spiritual stones." There were no spirit stones in the outside world, so Si Tuyin and the others' cultivation speed was much slower. If they could bring these spirit stones back, their family's cultivation speed would definitely increase a lot. As they understood more about Penglai Island, Bailey Hongzhuang was no longer as worried as before. On the contrary, as long as they had enough strength, it would not be a problem to stay here. She believed that even if her father, mother, and master were to come here, they would also be able to live well and would not be in too much danger. Of course, this was on the premise that they did not provoke the 3 major forces. Otherwise, it would be extremely troublesome. Chapter 3290. Bachin, this time, Diyujue really helped a lot with the transformation of your physique. We should go and thank him properly. Otherwise, I will feel really bad. Bailey Hongzhuang raised her eyes and looked at Bachin. Now, she was also very grateful to Diyujue. If it weren't for Dijue's help, they would still be in pain. It would be a pity if they couldn't thank him personally. Perhaps their gratitude didn't mean much to Diyujue, but only then could they feel at ease. What's more, they only met Diyujue by chance. The fact that the latter helped them like this showed his sincerity. Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Bachin also nodded. His thoughts were the same as Bailey Hongzhuang's. Previously, when I talked about the glacial tears, I lied to him. I think it's better to tell him the reason directly. Honesty is the most basic thing to do. The hesitation in Bachin's eyes turned into determination. Previously, when Diyujue asked him, he hesitated, but in the end, he didn't tell the truth. Now that he thought about it, he felt that he was letting down Diyujue's sincerity by hiding it. After all, Di Yujue had been honest with him from the beginning to the end. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. She also saw that Di Beichun had been feeling very conflicted because of this. She immediately responded, "I support you." In fact, this wasn't a reason why they couldn't tell others. It was just that the Golden Flame auction house had been collecting the glacial tears. They didn't know why the other party was doing this, so they always wanted to be on guard. But now that the problem of their physique had been solved, they naturally didn't need to continue hiding it. Xiren and Shangwan Yingying didn't have any opinions about Di Beichun's decision. Speaking of which, the other party had really helped them a lot, so it was only right to thank them. After making the decision, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others immediately set off for the Golden Flame auction house. However, when Di Beichun told them the purpose of their visit, Manager Jean gave them a very helpless answer. "I'm really sorry. Our young master has already set off for a long journey. I'm afraid he won't be back for a while." This was the second time Manager Jean met Di Beichun, but he didn't dare to neglect Di Beichun. Even if Di Yujue had already left, Di Beichun was still Di Yujue's friend. He was someone he had to treat seriously. Hearing Manager Jin's answer, Di Beichun couldn't help but feel disappointed. When Di Yujue went to drink with him that day, he said goodbye. However, he didn't expect Di Yujue to be so fast. In just a few days, Di Yujue had already left. In the end, he didn't catch up, and this matter would become a regret in his heart. Because he couldn't be honest with Di Yujue, there was always a trace of guilt. However, he didn't know how long Di Yujue would be away this time, and whether they would have a chance to meet again in the future. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others left the Golden Flame auction house with slight disappointment. However, before they left, Manager Jean gave them a few invitation letters from the Golden Flame auction house. Chapter 3291. Gao Hanshun and the other two had been busy searching for Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Xiaonan had left Penglai Island a few days after the auction had ended. They had even bumped into Xiaonan when they were searching for Bailey Hongzhuang. However, Xiaonan did not have any expression on her face when she saw them. Instead, she acted as if she had never met them before and left without looking at them. Seeing this, Gao Hanshun and the other two understood that they no longer had any hope of joining the Crimson Moon sect through Xiaonan. They could not help but feel a sense of defeat. However, it was mostly due to the resentment towards Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. If it had not been for these four fellows, they would not have ended up in such a state. Unfortunately, every step of their development was as if they were treading on thin ice. If they still could not find Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, all their efforts would have been for naught. I really don't understand where these four fellows have hidden themselves. We've been searching for so many days, but we haven't found any trace of them. I'm beginning to suspect that these fellows have become invisible. Lu Jiangang sighed. This feeling made him feel as if he had returned to the time when they were searching for Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three on Emerald Island. They had spent so much manpower and resources just to find these four people. They never thought that after spending so much time on Emerald Island, these four fellows would still manage to slip away right before their eyes. Could it be that these fellows' concealment skills were really that great? It was bad enough that they had been deceived the first time, but this time, they had actually managed to escape? Wouldn't this be too embarrassing for them? Gue Jun's expression was very ugly as well. Initially, he had been full of confidence that he would be able to find Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. However, as time passed, his confidence grew weaker and weaker. He even felt that unless these fellows were willing to appear in front of them, they would never be able to find them. Only the heavens know if these fellows were born in the year of the turtle. They would hide at the slightest disagreement. I really have to hand it to them. Gao Hanchun's mood was undoubtedly the worst. His brother's death had not been avenged yet. If he let these four fellows escape, he would not be able to eliminate his demonic barrier. His strength would be a problem in the future. Now, he had decided to let go of everything and not think about anything else. He only wanted to take the lives of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Let's pay more attention. I don't think the four of them will leave so easily. Gao Hanshun said slowly, even though his words were not very convincing. The three of them sighed at the same time. This kind of feeling of defeat was really hard to bear. The four of them wandered aimlessly on the street. Suddenly, Lu Jiangang looked ahead with a face full of shock. Because of his excitement, he couldn't even speak clearly. "Look, aren't those the four guys we're looking for?" When they heard Lu Jiangang's words, Gao Hanshun and Gui Jun immediately looked to the front. Their eyes lit up when they saw what was ahead. Sure enough, the four figures walking in front of them were Bailey Hongzhuang and the others whom they had been looking for so many days and hated to the bone. "That's right. It's them," Gui Jun said excitedly. Chapter 3292. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three did not return to the inn immediately after leaving the Golden Flame auction house. They had already accomplished their goal in coming to Penglai Island. There was only one thing left for them to do, and that was Gao Hanshun's problem. The other two map fragments must be in Gao Hanshun's hands. As long as they could get rid of Gao Hanshun and obtain his Chinquan pouch, they would be able to piece the four map fragments together and uncover the secrets of the map fragments. These four map fragments have been hidden using such a special method. The things drawn behind them must not be simple. Now that they finally knew the whereabouts of these four map fragments, they were naturally unwilling to give up this opportunity. However, they had no idea where Gao Hanshun and the other two were. Previously, they were so focused on the tears of frigid heat that they did not pay attention to Gao Hanshun and the other three's movements. Therefore, it was undoubtedly extremely difficult to find them at this moment. After thinking about it, searching aimlessly was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Therefore, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three decided to take advantage of this opportunity to take a look around the Penglai Palace. Naturally, they could not get close to the interior of the Penglai Palace. However, since they had come to Penglai Island, it was not a wasted trip to see the general appearance of the Penglai Palace. Moreover, they felt that Gao Hanshun and the other two must be thinking of joining a certain force. It was obviously impossible for them to join the 100 Flowers Gate. Moreover, based on Xiaonan's previous performance, the possibility of joining the Crimson Moon sect was also eliminated. Therefore, the biggest possibility left was the Penglai Palace. They thought that they might be able to meet Gao Hanshun and the other two near the Penglai Palace. If they could really find them, it would undoubtedly be excellent. In my opinion, those three fellows have most likely left. With their current destitute state, if they don't find a force to stay in, their days will be really difficult. Xiren spread his hands. In his opinion, if Gao Hanshun dared to cause trouble for them, it would be impossible for him to not make a move for so many days. Since he had not come for so long, it proved that the other party did not dare to make a move on Penglai Island and had left. If that's the case, it won't be easy for us to find Gao Hanshun again. Bailey Hongzhuang frowned. There were so many islands in Penglai Island that they could not determine which island Gao Hanshun had gone to. It was obviously impossible to search one by one. They did not have the energy and time to search. Di Beichun put one hand on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder and smiled. "It's all right. I feel that this map fragment is very fated with us and will eventually fall into our hands." Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "I hope so." "The four of you have been hiding for so long, and we've finally found you." When Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three heard this voice, they immediately turned around. With this look, they found that Gao Hanshun and the other two had appeared behind them. They couldn't help but be surprised. This really didn't take much effort, Chapter 3293. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Gao Hanshun and the other two in front of her. She didn't know when she would see them again, but she didn't expect to meet them so soon. It seemed that the enmity between them would be completely settled today. "I don't want to have any fate with a guy like you." Di Beichun's lips curved into a sarcastic smile, and a cold light appeared in his deep eyes. They came to Penglai Island to look for medicinal herbs. But Gao Han and his two brothers became their stumbling blocks and wasted too much of their time. Fortunately, they were lucky. If they were unlucky, they would have died in the hands of these guys. In terms of hatred, Di Beichun was no less than Gao Han. Listening to Di Beichun's words, Gao Han couldn't help but sneer and said, "You killed my brother, and now you're telling me this. Isn't it a bit too funny? Just by looking at a guy like you, you should know what kind of person your two brothers are. We kindly saved them from a group of monsters, but they repaid kindness with ingratitude and tried to take our lives. In the end, they died in our hands. They deserve to die." Shangguan Yingying glared. Thinking of Gao Hanxia and Gao Hanxiu, she was full of anger. This kind of ungrateful guy deserved to die. Lu Jiangang and Guo Jun couldn't help but look at Gao Han. They only knew that Gao Hanxuan's brother died in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. As for why he died, they didn't know at all. If this was the case, then the initiator of this ill-fated relationship was Gao Hanxuan's brother. Gao Hanxuan's face was gloomy, and his eyes flickered. He also had some understanding of his brother's temperament. This kind of thing was indeed possible. If he guessed correctly, it should be that Gao Hanxia and the other two discovered that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had treasures, so they decided to make a move on the spur of the moment. But they didn't expect that they would die in the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Regarding this, Gao Han did not feel that it was a big deal. This was how it was between cultivators. Snatching was even more normal. He didn't care about any of these reasons at all. The only thing he cared about was that his younger brother had died at the hands of these guys in front of him. "You don't have to tell me all this nonsense. I only know that my brother died in your hands. You must pay with your blood," Gao Han said in a tough tone. Looking at Gao Hanxuan's unreasonable appearance, Shangguan Yingying was speechless. "You're really shameless." Bailey Hongzhuang curled her lips and said to Shangguan Yingying, "Just by looking at his younger brother, you already know what kind of person he is. Don't tell me you still have some hope for him?" Shangguan Yingying nodded slightly. "Indeed, they are all the same. How annoying." Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangguan Yingying were ridiculing him, Gao Hanxuan's face turned ugly. However, he was not in a hurry to make a move, because he still had one more thing to confirm. "Let me ask you, are you the ones who helped Yi Li Fei frame us on the Emerald Island?" Gao Hanxuan's gaze was fixed on Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Even if he had already determined the answer in his heart, he still needed to get the confirmation from Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. If not, then he still had to find the mastermind behind this. Chapter 3294. This was undoubtedly the question that they were most concerned about. Even now, they still could not confirm who was the mastermind behind the plot. This was definitely not Yi Li Fei's own idea. Although they felt that it was very likely that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were behind this, they still needed to confirm it. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others found it funny when they saw the serious looks on Gao Han and the other two's faces. This matter had already happened for more than half a year. They never thought that Gao Han and the other two would still not be able to figure out what was going on. This was truly ironic. "Why should we tell you?" Xiren stared mockingly at Gao Han and the other two. He could not help but feel a sense of mockery towards these three extremely loathsome fellows. Sometimes, dying without knowing why was the most painful thing to do. Xiren's answer had clearly exceeded Gao Han and the other two's expectations. They had thought that they would either admit or deny it. They never thought that this would happen, so they did not know how to answer. "Don't tell me you want us to hold a sword to your neck before you answer?" Gao Han narrowed his eyes. The sinister light in his eyes grew even more intense. "That will depend on whether you have the ability to do so." Xiren's voice turned cold. The sinister light in his eyes was not any weaker than Gao Hanxuan's. The hatred between the two parties had long reached a point where only one of them could live and the other could live. No matter what they said now, it would only be nonsense and meaningless. Gao Han and the other two were very surprised by Xiren's unyielding attitude. According to their judgment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's powers should not be very strong. If they were very strong, they would not have been chased to such a state back on Emerald Island. It had only been half a year. Even if they had improved, it could not have been by much. If that was the case, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three should be very flustered when they saw them. Why did they not look flustered at all? On the contrary, they looked as if they were as calm as the clouds and as calm as the clouds, not showing any fear at all. This did not make sense at all. Gao Hanchun and the other two couldn't help but look at each other. In the face of such a situation, they didn't have much confidence. They only felt that there might be a trap. Thinking up to this point, Gao Hanchun and the other two couldn't help but look around. They wondered if Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 had found some helpers nearby and were purposely taking advantage of this opportunity to lure them into a trap so that they could capture them all in one fell swoop. As soon as the conflicting voices of the two parties were heard, it had already attracted the attention of many people. How many cultivators had participated in the large-scale auction at the Golden Flame Auction House? Therefore, many people recognized Bailey Hongzhuang and Gao Hanchun almost immediately and immediately surrounded them, waiting to watch a good show. I didn't expect that the leader of the heaven-shaking faction would be at odds with Di Beichun and the others again. I was wondering why Gao Hanchun kept biting on Di Beichun and the others. It turns out that his younger brother died at the hands of Di Beichun and the others. Didn't you hear what Di Bei said? It was Gao Hanchun's younger brother who came looking for trouble first. That's why they took action. Chapter 3295. Gao Hanchun looked around and saw that many cultivators had already gathered around. At first glance, all of them seemed to be here for the fun. They could not determine who might be Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4's helpers. Thinking of this, Gao Hanchun and the other two's expressions turned ugly. There were many people on Penglai Island who liked to join in the fun. No matter when, as long as a conflict broke out, it would attract a lot of people to watch. Moreover, the other party would not be afraid of your gaze at all, because none of the cultivators who could come here were simple. Big brother, could it be a trap? Guo Jun looked around with hesitation and uncertainty. They were unfamiliar with Penglai Island, and Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 had a good relationship with the Golden Flame Auction House. If the Golden Flame Auction House intended to help Bailey Hongzhuang's group, it would be impossible for them to guard against it. Gao Hanchun's expression was complicated. Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4's actions were too suspicious. He originally thought that the other party would think of a way to escape when they saw them. He did not expect the other party to swagger and wait for them. Weren't they a little too fearless? Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4 was waiting for Gao Hanchun's group to make a move. Coincidentally, they could determine their cultivation base through the aura they were emitting. Even if their cultivation base was not as high as Gao Hanchun's group, they had the advantage in numbers. Moreover, after training in the oceanic world these days, they rarely fought with human cultivators. They wanted to use this battle to determine their combat strength. However, after waiting for a long time, they did not see Gao Hanchun's group of 3 take any action. On the contrary, they kept looking around with caution. This was interesting. What's wrong with these guys? Shangwan Yingying's eyes were wide open, filled with curiosity. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled slightly. She chuckled. They might think that we're deliberately ambushing them and that there might be threats around. Although Gao Hanchun was very courageous, he was also a suspicious person by nature. Otherwise, when they first met Gao Hanchun on Emerald Island, Gao Hanchun would not have tried to send them to Yili Fei. In the end, he got himself into big trouble. There's a threat around? Shangwan Yingying raised her eyebrows slightly and then smiled. Isn't that good? This way, when they fight, they have to pay attention to their surroundings at all times. This is very beneficial to us. Xiren secretly gave Shangwan Yingying a thumbs up and praised. Our Yingying is getting smarter now. Shangwan Yingying raised her chin slightly and said proudly, of course. Do you have the ability to fight us in the life and death arena? Gao Hanchun stared at Bailey Hongzhuang's group of 4. In an instant, he came up with the most advantageous plan in his mind. The life and death arena was a place that existed on every island of Ponlai Island. If there was a huge trouble between cultivators and they would fight to the death, both sides could choose to enter the life and death arena. Most of the life and death arena was a one-on-one battle, but there were also group battles. Chapter 3296. As long as the cultivators were on the life and death ring, no one could interrupt or help them. Listening to Gao Hanchuan's words, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three understood his plan. They couldn't help but laugh in their hearts. This guy was really worried about other threats around him. Why do we have to go on the life and death ring? Xiren's rhetorical question made Gao Hanshun speechless again. This guy's way of thinking was really different from others. Generally, when people asked you if you had the ability, you would naturally say yes. Who would ask why? I'm asking you if you have the guts to accept it. Gao Hanshun emphasized, and then his voice carried a bit of contempt. But useless cowards like you, I'm afraid you don't dare to accept it at all, right? Gue Jun and Lu Jiangang also admired Gao Hanchuan's cleverness. As long as they were on the life and death ring, the final winner would definitely be them. Bailey Hongzhuang chuckled, and her deep phoenix eyes rippled with a cynical and sarcastic light. I say, gang leader Gao, you have been on Ponlai Island for so many years. As a gang leader, the four of us are just newcomers who have been on Ponlai Island for half a year. Why don't you take a look at your own cultivation and our cultivation? Now you are making such an unfair request to us. Let me ask you, do you have any shame? Do you have any shame? When Bailey Hongzhuang said this sentence, Gao Hanshun only felt that his face had been slapped hard. It was embarrassing and painful. The onlooking cultivators also laughed. Bailey Hongzhuang's words were really accurate. She directly exposed Gao Hanchuan's sanctimonious face. Indeed, Gao Hanshun had been on Ponlai Island for so many years, and the Jintian faction was also a famous existence. However, now he made such a request to newcomers. Wasn't it obvious that he was taking advantage of them? Bailey Hongzhuang's words were not wrong at all. Gao Hanshun was really shameless. Shang Guanying and the others couldn't help but secretly praise Bailey Hongzhuang in their hearts. Hongzhuang's words were sharp every time she opened her mouth, directly slapping them in the face. In comparison, Shang Guanying felt that her previous methods were too weak. Gao Hanshun and the other two looked embarrassed. Not only had their plan been exposed just like that, they had even been labeled as shameless bullies. If this were to spread out, it wouldn't sound good. I didn't expect you to be so sharp-tongued. Even the dead can be brought back to life by you. Gao Hanchuan's eyes were extremely gloomy. He had suffered so much at the hands of these four rookies, and now he was being labeled as such in front of everyone. He was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Thank you for the compliment. Bailey Hongzhuang shrugged and accepted Gao Hanchuan's sarcasm without hesitation. But I'm telling the truth. Xiao He and Xiao Bai sat on Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder and couldn't help but clap their hands. Their master's ability to anger people to death was really incomparable to ordinary people. After seeing this scene, Gue Jun also knew that no matter what they said now, it would be useless. Because no matter what, the other party had already labeled them as bullying the weak. It would be unreasonable to say anything else. Big brother, let's just ignore this kid and directly attack. Chapter 3297. Hearing Gue Jun's words, Gao Hanshun also nodded. Instead of continuing to make a fool of themselves, it would be better to make a clean move. As for the cultivators who might be hiding in the surroundings, they only needed to pay more attention to them. In the next moment, a vigorous origin power aura erupted from Gao Hanshun and the other two's bodies, revealing their true strength. The moment the opponent's aura erupted, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had already clearly understood the opponent's cultivation base. Gao Hanchuan's strength had reached the 8th level of the Purple Realm, while Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun's cultivation base had reached the 7th level of the Purple Realm. This level of strength was no different from what Bailey Hongzhuang had previously estimated. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's aura also spread out at the same time. All of them were at the 5th level of the Purple Realm. Seeing this scene, the surrounding crowd's eyes also changed. Immediately, they were even more certain that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were indeed newcomers to Penglai Island. Otherwise, it would be impossible for all of them to be at the 5th level of the Purple Realm. However, judging from the situation between the two sides, the difference in strength was a little too great. In other words, this was a battle without any suspense at all. Gao Hanshun and the other two, who originally had some doubts about the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, immediately breathed a sigh of relief after noticing the aura of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's aura. In front of them, a 5th level of the Purple Realm was no threat at all. It couldn't be easier to get rid of them. Stupid guys, with only this much strength, you actually dare to be arrogant in front of us. I think you're really tired of living. A thick smile appeared on Lu Jiangong's face. No matter how humiliating they've been before, as long as they killed Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, all the rumors would naturally cease to exist. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's faces were serious. They had never underestimated the strength of Gao Hanshun and the other two. They had to treat this battle seriously. If they were not careful, they could really lose their lives. White Lion and I will deal with Gao Hanshun first. The three of you will deal with Lu Jiangang and Gue Jun, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai. Don't reveal yourselves first. Sneak attacks will have the best effect. Di Beichen had already thought of a way to fight. Baisher's current cultivation had already reached the 6th level of the Purple Realm. Although Di Beichen was only at the 5th level of the Purple Realm, with the help of the Blood Aura Field, he could still raise their cultivation by a level. It was almost impossible to kill Gao Hanshun, but as long as they could stall for time until Bailey Hongzhuang and the others killed Gue Jun or Lu Jiangang, it would be enough. With only you and White Lion, won't the pressure be too great? Bailey Hongzhuang was a little worried. The strength of an 8th level Purple Realm was no joke. If the other party made a move, it was very likely that they would lose their lives. Don't worry, White Lion and my goal is to stall for time. We won't fight to the death with Gao Hanshun, Di Beichen said. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment before nodding. All right, Bailey Hongzhuang, Wen Ziren, and Shangwan Yingying looked at each other. In this way, they had to end the battle quickly. Otherwise, Di Beichen and White Lion would be in danger. In the next second, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three, along with White Lion, had already faced their respective enemies. When Gao Hanshun and the other two saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three had already assigned their opponents, they sneered in their hearts. Chapter 3298. Gao Hanshun and the other two did not care about any of the other party's tactics. To them, they only needed to crush the other party's strength. Di Beichen and White Lion stood opposite Gao Hanshun. Their handsome faces were solemn and serious, but there was not the slightest bit of timidity or fear. White Lion's gaze was very sharp. This damn fellow had repeatedly caused trouble for them. It really wanted to bite off the other party's neck. Seeing that Di Beichen had a contract beast with him, Gao Hanshun could not help but mock. Your contract beast looks pretty good. It should taste pretty good after being stewed. White Lion's gaze turned increasingly cold and vicious. In the past, there had been people who had said such things to it. However, it had bitten off their necks and sent them to hell. Roar! Baisher roared, and the roar shook the sky. Gao Hanshun couldn't help but stare blankly. He did not expect that the contract beast beside Di Beichen was not so simple. The surrounding cultivators had long been aware of the strength of Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. They were no longer willing to stay here because the outcome could be determined without a battle. However, when they noticed White Lion, their eyes lit up with interest. It was rare to see such a tall and mighty contract beast. They were really curious about how powerful White Lion was. I think it's too early for you to be happy. You might become its food in a while. In the face of Gao Hanchuan's mockery, Di Beichun was not afraid at all. His deep eyes burned with a strong desire to fight. The transformation of the heavenly mandate constitution had caused him to no longer feel as repressed as before. Now that he was facing an enemy, he was full of fighting spirit. Hearing this, Gao Hanchun sneered, "Kid, you've only been on Ponlai Island for a short time. You'll suffer for being so arrogant sooner or later. However, now that you've met me, you won't have the chance to suffer in the future." Gao Hanchuan's gaze suddenly turned cold. His body flashed, and his 5 fingers curled into a claw. He attacked Di Beichun's neck without hesitation. He wanted to break this kid's neck directly. However, just as Gao Hanchun attacked, White Lion took the lead and charged forward. Don't underestimate it just because it's a demonic beast. As a beast king, it's not the least bit inferior to a human cultivator. Moreover, it's currently the strongest in the group. Bang! Gao Hanchuan's attack was actually blocked by Bai Shi. Seeing this, Gao Hanchun was dumbfounded. He stared blankly at the white lion in front of him, as if he couldn't believe it. Even if it was just a casual attack, it definitely wasn't something that a contracted beast could withstand. It wasn't just Gao Hanchun. All the cultivators present were shocked by White Lion's sudden move. Such combat power was beyond their expectations. At the same time, White Lion's true aura was revealed. 6th level of the Purple Realm. The moment everyone understood Bai Shi's strength, they could not help but gasp. Their eyes were filled with shock. Oh my god, am I seeing things? This contracted beast cultivation had actually reached the 6th level of the Purple Realm? How'd he do it? Its strength is even stronger than its owner. Whoever has this kind of contracted beast is too heaven-defying. Chapter 32:99. Contract beasts had always been the most loyal companions of a cultivator. Almost every cultivator hoped to have a contract beast that could fight alongside them. However, it was not easy to find a contract beast that was suitable for them and had the potential to develop. Many of the contract beasts that cultivators contracted in the early stages would only become a burden in the later stages. Not only would they not be of any help to the cultivator, they would also become the butt of everyone's jokes. Many cultivators had not been able to find a contract beast that was suitable for them, so they did not use this opportunity. However, as they grew stronger, there were fewer and fewer contract beasts that were suitable for them. Most importantly, there were not many sealing masters in the Shangxian continent, so the number of contract beasts was also very small. At their level of cultivation, to have a contract beast that was about the same strength as them was already a winner in life. However, the contract beast in front of them was actually stronger than their master. This was simply a great weapon, a great helper in battle. Ever since Bai Shi appeared on Ponlai Island, it had attracted the attention of many people because its tall and mighty figure was really eye-catching. Now that it had unleashed its strength, everyone realized that this guy was not only strong on the outside, but also powerful on the inside. Gao Hanchun realized that he had underestimated this contract beast. A Purple Realm level 6 contract beast. If it continued to develop, this contract beast's potential would be terrifying to the extreme. Bai Shi grinned, revealing its incomparably sharp teeth. Its pair of beastly eyes stared fiercely at Gao Hanchun. It was going to make this damned guy pay the price. Seeing this, Gao Hanchun was also angered. So what if the other party's contract beast was very strong? He would still cook it and eat it. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang, Wenziren, and Shangwan Yingying went to meet Lu Jiangang and Gui Jun. The 3 of them wanted to end the battle quickly and get rid of these 2 guys as soon as possible. Only then would they be able to help Di Beichun. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, and I will deal with Lu Jiangang. You guys deal with Gui Jun, Bailey Hongzhuang said slowly. Hearing this, Shangwan Yingying and Wenziren nodded. Bailey Hongzhuang, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai's combined strength was also very terrifying. Even if Lu Jiangang had reached the 7th level of the Purple Realm, Bailey Hongzhuang should be able to deal with him. On the other hand, the 2 of them were only at the 5th level of the Purple Realm, so they had to be careful when facing Gui Jun. If they weren't careful, they would be in danger. Xiao He, Xiao Bai, follow my instructions and launch a sneak attack. Bailey Hongzhuang's expression was solemn. She had to make a breakthrough first. Only then could they win. Don't worry, Master. We'll be ready at any time. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. As long as they could catch Lu Jiangang off guard, she was still very confident in dealing with him. Lu Jiangang saw that both Gao Hanshun and Gui Jun were dealing with two people, but there was only Bailey Hongzhuang in front of him. He instantly felt humiliated. Could it be that in the eyes of the other party, he was really the weakest person? You're alone? Are you trying to get yourself killed? Lu Jiangang looked coldly at Bailey Hongzhuang, his anger already showing. Bailey Hongzhuang's lips curled slightly, and she said mockingly, I'm not here to get myself killed. I'm here to send you to your death. Damn brat, you're too arrogant, Lu Jiangang said angrily. Chapter 3300. Bailey Hongzhuang's attitude of not putting him in her eyes successfully angered Lu Jiangang. No matter what, he was still the second leader of the Jintian faction. Now, a mere fifth-level Purple Realm brat actually dared to talk nonsense in front of him. It was really abominable. In the next second, Lu Jiangang attacked Bailey Hongzhuang without hesitation. He wanted to let this guy know that there was an insurmountable gap between Purple Realm 5th level and Purple Realm 7th level. Strength was strength. If one couldn't reach this level of cultivation, everything else would just be a joke. The moment Lu Jiangang made his move, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes narrowed, and she quickly retreated. She knew the gap between her and Lu Jiangang, and there was no advantage for her to face him head-on. However, Lu Jiangang had already discovered Bailey Hongzhuang's intention. He would not give Bailey Hongzhuang any chance to escape. He immediately sealed off Bailey Hongzhuang's escape route, not giving the latter any chance to escape. Although he was not as smart as Gao Hanshun and Gui Jun, in terms of combat strength, Gao Hanshun and Gui Jun were extremely convinced of his strength. Otherwise, he would not have been able to become the second leader of the Jintian faction. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang was forced to meet Lu Jiangang's palm. Her body immediately retreated a few steps before she could stabilize her body. The force from her opponent's hand caused Bailey Hongzhuang's right hand to tremble slightly. Her eyes narrowed, and she secretly thought that the strength of a Purple Realm 7th level was not simple. He could actually numb her hand for a moment. It must be known that since she started cultivating in the desert world, Bailey Hongzhuang's strength was much stronger than that of cultivators of the same level. Even if her strength was higher than that of a cultivator, he was afraid that his strength would not be comparable to hers. According to her original judgment, although there was a gap between her and Lu Jiangang's strength, the gap should not be too big. But now it seemed that she had underestimated Lu Jiangang. His strength was much stronger than she had imagined. While Bailey Hongzhuang was secretly surprised, Lu Jiangang was even more surprised. He was surprised that his palm did not directly cripple his opponent's hand. He had always been very proud of his strength. Cultivators of the same level could not be compared to him in terms of strength. Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation was 2 levels lower than his, so he should be able to completely crush her. However, Bailey Hongzhuang's hand was only trembling slightly. Although it was numb, she did not lose her ability to fight. This made him somewhat confused. His opponent's cultivation was only of the Purple Realm 5th level. At this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang did not waste any more time. She Hongzhuang's power, and her blood aura's power. She Hongzhuang, she did not waste any more time. Lu Jiangang's Hongzhuang, Lu Jiangang Hongzhuang, and Lu Jiangang. But with blood Hongzhuang, yes, bloods of him. Of Hongzha, of Imjiangov, of his. Her blood aura surged into the sky, and the surrounding area was quickly enveloped by the smell of blood. However, at this moment, everyone's attention was only on Bailey Hongzhuang. As the blood aura's field exploded, Bailey Hongzhuang's aura began to rise as well. It broke through from the Purple Realm 5th level to the Purple Realm 6th level. It was still gradually increasing, but in the end, it did not break through to the Purple Realm's 7th level. This was because the power required was too great. Chapter 3301. The cultivators present were also shocked. Their faces flashed with astonishment. However, there were many knowledgeable people present. Even if they had never seen the blood chi field before, they still had some understanding of the characteristics and functions of the blood chi field. What's more, the demonic tower was on Penglai Island. Just thinking about the demonic tower gave everyone a certain understanding of the blood refining tower. Such rich blood chi in addition to such a heaven-defying increase in strength. Could this be the blood refining tower's inheritance? A cultivator couldn't help but voice out the doubts in his heart. This blood chi field was undoubtedly an inheritance that everyone yearned for. However, the number of people who obtained it was extremely few. Everyone had only heard of it and had never truly seen it. The demonic tower was on Penglai Island. Many people had tried to challenge it. However, most of them could only participate in the challenge tournament. No one could obtain the inheritance of the demonic tower's murderous aura. As the cultivator's voice fell, everyone's pupils shrank. When the two were connected, it really did seem like the blood chi field. This could indeed be the blood chi field. My God, I have lived for so long, but this is the first time I have seen a cultivator who obtained the blood chi field. In that case, this kid is actually a genius. I have tried to challenge the blood refining tower before. However, that level was too abnormal. I couldn't pass it at all. For a moment, everyone's gaze towards Bailey Hongzhuang changed. This was really too shocking. All the cultivators who obtained the blood chi field were geniuses. However, no one expected to meet the inheritor of the blood chi field here. Lu Jiangang obviously didn't think of this point. After everyone's reminder, he felt that he should find a way to deal with this guy in front of him. The inheritor of the blood refining tower was a genius among geniuses. If he couldn't be completely killed before he developed, then his development in the future would be extremely terrifying. Gao Hanshun and Gue Jun couldn't help but be attracted by the movements of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Their hearts were filled with astonishment. From the beginning to the end, they didn't think that Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were too difficult to deal with. They didn't expect that there was such a genius cultivator among them. This was not simple. Jiangang, end the battle quickly. Kill her, Gao Hanshun said without hesitation. Hearing Gao Hanshun's words, Lu Jiangang also recovered from shock. He immediately nodded and said, I understand. In the Penglai Palace, two figures were chatting when the aura that suddenly erupted caused the two of them to stop talking. Intense shock appeared on their faces. Zihua. This aura. When did our Penglai Island? We haven't seen such a genius for a very long time. Are you interested in going over to take a look? Long Yanwei raised his brows and smiled. Of course. In the next second, Zihua and Long Yanwei turned into two streams of light and quickly disappeared from the Penglai Palace. They appeared at the battlefield outside the Penglai Palace. Chapter 3302. It seemed that their judgment was not wrong. The other party was really the inheritor of the blood aura. This little guy is very young. It seems that he is only 20 years old. Not only did he obtain the inheritance of the blood aura, but he has also reached the 5th level of the Purple Realm. He is indeed a genius. Admiration appeared in Zihua's eyes. At this age, this strength, even in the Penglai Island, he was a genius among geniuses. This little guy has changed his appearance, and his disguise technique is very good. Long Yanwei raised his eyebrows as a smile appeared on his lips. If he did not have a special ability in this area, he would not have been able to see through the other party's disguise. Hearing this, Zihua was slightly stunned. He did not realize that Bailey Hongzhuang had changed her appearance. A 5th level of the Purple Realm against a 7th level of the Purple Realm. This little guy is quite brave. Zihua smiled faintly. Which genius isn't a daring person? This little guy also came out from a place like the Bloodground Abyss. His courage is naturally not something an ordinary person can compare to. The two of them looked at each other as interest appeared in their eyes. Although the blood-ground abyss had existed for a long time, there were very few cultivators who had obtained the inheritance. It was rare to meet such a cultivator who had obtained the inheritance. So how could they not be interested? After taking a look, Izihua's gaze was immediately attracted by the white lion. That contract beast is very special. Hearing Izihua's words, Long Yanwei also looked at the white lion. With this glance, his eyes could not help but reveal a hint of surprise. He was very familiar with monster beasts. No matter what kind of monster beast it was, he could recognize it at a glance. However, the monster beast in front of him was definitely not an ordinary monster beast. Yanwei, can you tell what kind of contract beast this is? Izihua looked at Long Yanwei. He did not know as much about contract beasts as Long Yanwei. He only felt that the monster beast in front of him was unusual, but he could not tell what kind of monster it was. Long Yanwei's gaze was tightly focused on the white lion. His expression revealed some uncertainty, but the thought in his heart could not be dismissed. I think that this guy is very likely to be a beast king. Following Long Yanwei's words, Izihua could not help but be stunned. His eyes immediately widened as a thick expression of disbelief surfaced on his face. Is what you said true? Izihua couldn't believe it. How can a beast king become a human's contract beast? He had never heard of such a thing before. I also find it hard to believe. However, look at the king character on this fellow's forehead. Normally, Yao beasts would not have such a character on their foreheads. Izihua kept his eyes on White Lion, who was in the midst of battle. Purple Realm's 6th level, with its mighty appearance and imposing aura, it really matched a beast king. Are you sure? Izihua raised his eyebrows. If the beast king had really become a human cultivator's contracted beast, it would be shocking news. However, Long Yanwei frowned. I feel that it's very possible, but in reality, I can't be sure. Why? According to the Beast King's description, the Beast King should be completely white. However, this demonic beast in front of us not only has white fur, it also has red fur. The combination of red and white makes it even more ferocious. Chapter 3303. Long Yanwei was secretly speechless. He usually studied demonic beasts and boasted that he knew all demonic beasts like the back of his hand. However, he really couldn't be sure of the situation before him. Seeing that Long Yanwei couldn't be sure, Izihua was even more surprised. Usually, there was no demonic beast that Long Yanwei couldn't identify. This is really strange. Long Yanwei sighed. Looks like I'll have to ask these little guys what kind of demonic beast this is. Hearing this, Izihua couldn't help but laugh. I didn't expect you to have a time like this. After Bailey Hongzhuang's blood aura field exploded, Lu Jiangang didn't dare to underestimate Bailey Hongzhuang anymore. After the blood aura field's enhancement, Bailey Hongzhuang's cultivation base wasn't too far away from reaching the 7th level of the Purple Realm. Moreover, every talented cultivator often had their own unique methods. If he wasn't careful, it was very likely that he would fail miserably. With a move, Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Jiangang began fighting. Xiao He and Xiao Bai didn't make a move from beginning to end. They were waiting for their master to find the opponent's mistake before giving the fatal blow. Bang, bang, bang. When Bailey Hongzhuang and Lu Jiangang collided head-on, the astonishment on the crowd's faces couldn't help but become even more intense. Even though they had long heard of the power of the blood aura field, a 5th-level Purple Realm cultivator being able to go head-on against a 7th-level Purple Realm cultivator, this kind of increase in strength was a little too shocking. Bailey Hongzhuang's sarcastic words successfully provoked Lu Jiangang's anger. Immediately, every move he made was ruthless. He wanted nothing more than to immediately take Bailey Hongzhuang's life. In response, Bailey Hongzhuang responded methodically from beginning to end. As early as when Bailey Hongzhuang came into contact with Gao Hanshun and the other two, she discovered that Lu Jiangang was the most impulsive one among the three of them. He was far from being as careful as Gao Hanshun and Gue Jun. For this kind of cultivator, as long as you said a few words to provoke the other party, it would completely incite the other party's anger. Once the cultivator went in a battle with anger, it would be easy to make mistakes. In this way, Bailey Hongzhuang could better exploit this loophole, so she deliberately chose Lu Jiangang as her opponent. At the same time, it was precisely because Gue Jun was more cautious that he would pay more attention to the surrounding situation when fighting Xiren and Xiren. It was also a good situation for Xiren and Xiren. Xiren and Shangwan Yingying fought against Gue Jun together. The two of them had cultivated together since they were young, so their tacit understanding in battle was far from what ordinary people could compare with. Gue Jun had already noticed the tacit understanding between the two of them not long after he started fighting. No matter which side he attacked, the other side would always be able to provide timely assistance, making it impossible for him to find a breakthrough. The two people in front of him were clearly only at the 5th level of the Purple Realm, but Gue Jun felt that their battle strength had reached the 6th level of the Purple Realm. Therefore, under such cooperation, he was unable to break through for a long time. In addition, not only did he have to pay attention to the situation of the two people, he also had to pay attention to the surrounding helpers that could appear at any time. For a moment, he was unable to do anything to the two people in front of him. The situation of this battle was clearly beyond everyone's expectations. Everyone thought that Gao Hanshun and the other two would definitely win this battle as easily as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. They never thought that this would be a stalemate. At this moment, another burst of energy suddenly exploded. Boom! Chapter 3304. Everyone could not help but be dumbfounded. Many of them even rubbed their eyes, wondering if they had seen wrongly. Did I see wrongly? Is there another inheritor of the blood aura? You didn't see wrongly because I saw it too. However, when did the inheritance of the blood aura become so easy to obtain? Normally, I don't see any of them. Today, I actually saw 2 of them. Isn't this too surprising? Oh my God, will the other 2 young people also be the inheritors of the blood aura? This is too abnormal. Before Bailey Hongzhuang's blood aura had erupted, no one had thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 would be extraordinary people. However, now, no one dared to underestimate these newcomers who had just arrived at Penglai Island. This kind of strength was really abnormal. Everyone knew very well that as long as these 4 people stayed on Penglai Island for a while longer, their reputation would definitely spread. Gao Hanshun looked at Di Beichun, who was shrouded in the blood aura, in astonishment. His heart was in turmoil. Previously, he still did not understand. With his 2 younger brothers' methods, since they had decided to attack Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3, there should not be any problems. However, he did not expect that they would die in the hands of these 4 people in the end. Now, he finally understood that none of these 4 people were simple characters. The inheritors of the blood aura. Just this point alone made them incomparable to ordinary people. I have underestimated you. Gao Hanshun sneered. He knew that Di Beichun and Baisher would not have the guts to deal with him. It turned out that they still had a trick up their sleeves. Di Beichun's lips curled into a devilish arc. Not only have you underestimated me, you have also overestimated yourself. Long Yanwei and Yi Hua could not help but look at each other after seeing this scene. Their decision to come and watch the show today was indeed the right decision. 2 inheritors of the blood aura. One of them could be the contract beast of the Beast King. Although the other 2 cultivators did not have such a powerful inheritance, their combat strength was also very outstanding. The potential of these 4 was simply astonishing. Ta-ta-ta. Bailey Hongzhuang took a few steps back. After probing for a while, she had a good understanding of Lu Jiangong's strength. Next, it was time to use her real move. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang's hands swiftly flipped, and the origin energy within her body surged out explosively. She wanted to seize this opportunity to break through in one go. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's actions, Lu Jiangang did not slow down at all. His cultivation level was clearly higher than Bailey Hongzhuang's, but he still could not get rid of Bailey Hongzhuang after so long. It was really embarrassing. The two of you ambush Lu Jiangang. Attack him directly when his martial skill is about to be completed. Bailey Hongzhuang said. Xiao He and Xiao Bai immediately slid down from Bailey Hongzhuang's body. The two beads, one black and one white, did not attract anyone's attention in this dust-filled battlefield. They were already prepared long ago and were just waiting for their master's order. As Bailey Hongzhuang's hands flipped, a rainbow-colored origin energy radiance bloomed between her hands. Chapter 33:05. For a moment, the crowd could not help but look at each other. Logically speaking, they were considered to be experienced and knowledgeable. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three newcomers had surprised them time and time again. It was really unbelievable. What kind of elemental energy is this? It's so special. This elemental energy is too beautiful. I've never seen such beautiful elemental energy. A look of envy appeared in the eyes of the surrounding female cultivators. It was as if she had a halo around her when she was fighting. In response, the male cultivators could not help but look down on him. He's obviously a man, but his elemental energy is so gaudy. He's just like a woman. As Bailey Hongzhuang's hand seals gradually formed, a huge seven-colored glazed pagoda appeared behind Bailey Hongzhuang. This was a martial technique that belonged to the Lan family. Ever since Bailey Hongzhuang returned to the Lan family, this martial technique had naturally fallen into her hands. Although it was the same martial technique, the seven-colored glazed pagoda was much more powerful when it was executed by her than when it was executed by Lan Xinyan. The seven-colored glazed pagoda spun behind Bailey Hongzhuang. Even though they were far away, the crowd could feel the powerful energy contained within the seven-colored glazed pagoda. Earth-grade martial techniques had always been extremely powerful. Its destructive power was even more shocking. The golden sunlight shone on the seven-colored glazed pagoda. It was instantly dazzling. Feeling the aura from the seven-colored glazed pagoda, Lu Jiangang's face could not help but turn serious. At this point, he did not dare to be careless. This was because he could feel an aura from the seven-colored glazed pagoda that could threaten his life. This was not a joke. Lu Jiangang's hand seals formed faster and faster. He also had to display an extremely powerful martial technique. Otherwise, he would definitely be at a disadvantage in this collision. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were beside Lu Jiangang. They had concealed their auras. At this moment, Lu Jiangang's entire heart was focused on Bailey Hongzhuang. He did not notice the threat that existed beside him. Just as Lu Jiangang's martial skill was about to be completed, Xiao He suddenly made her move. It leaped up and used itself as a weapon to attack Lu Jiangang's temple. At the same time, Xiao Bai used the same method on the other side. It would be best if they could kick Lu Jiangang's head until it exploded. Even if they couldn't, they could at least stop Lu Jiangang from using his martial skill. Bang! Bang! The sudden attack was completely out of Lu Jiangang's expectations. He didn't even notice that there were people trying to sneak an attack on him. By the time he reacted, it was already too late. The only thing he could do was to give up on using his martial skill and use his essence force to protect his brain. However, this strength was also beyond his expectations. He only felt a sharp pain coming from his temples, as if his head was going to be deformed from the kick. Lu Jiangang's figure swayed. Under such a sneak attack, he couldn't control his body at all. Xiao He and Xiao Bai quickly retreated without even looking at Lu Jiangang's attack. At the same time, Bailey Hongzhuang's seven-colored glazed pagoda attacked Lu Jiangang without hesitation. Puchi. Chapter 33:06. This sudden turn of events had clearly exceeded everyone's expectations. It happened so quickly that many people did not even see what had happened. All they saw was that Lu Jiangang's martial skill had failed, and he was now lying on the ground. It was obvious that he would not be able to stand up anytime soon. Bailey Hongzhuang's 7-color glazed pagoda was coming at Lu Jiangang menacingly. Once it landed on his body, even if Lu Jiangang did not die, he would be half crippled. "Jiangang, watch out!" Gao Hanshun and Gui Jun could not help but shout after noticing Lu Jiangang's calm demeanor. The two of them immediately wanted to help Lu Jiangang. However, how could Di Beichun, Wen Xiren, and the others let them do as they wished? According to their plan, Bailey Hongzhuang's attack on Lu Jiangang was a breakthrough. As long as Lu Jiangang died, their chances of winning this battle would greatly increase. Seeing Di Beichun and Bai Shi standing in front of him stubbornly, Gao Hanchuan's eyes were about to split open. Previously, Di Beichun and Bai Shi had been fighting with him and had rarely faced him head-on. He did not mind at all and had only treated it as giving the kid a little more time to struggle. At this moment, he finally understood that these fellows had already made a plan. Their goal was to delay them. Bailey Hongzhuang's real goal was to deal with Lu Jiangang. Damn it! Faced with Di Beichun's entanglement, Gao Hanshun could not stand it anymore. He attacked Di Beichun viciously without hesitation. He had to save Lu Jiangang. Bang! In order to block Gao Hanchuan's path, Di Beichun blocked Gao Hanchuan's attack head-on. The enormous force caused Di Beichun to spit out a mouthful of blood. As the leader of the Heaven Shaking Association, Gao Hanchuan's strength was much stronger than that of an ordinary 8th-level Purple Realm cultivator. However, even so, Di Beichun still stood in front of Gao Hanshun. As long as Lu Jiangang died, the pressure on them would be greatly reduced. "Xiao Hei Xiao Bai, go and help." Bailey Hongzhuang noticed that Di Beichun, Wen Xiren, and Shangwan Yingying were under great pressure and immediately shouted. The sudden words couldn't help but surprise everyone. Wasn't Bailey Hongzhuang's team only made up of 4 people and a contract beast? What was this so-called Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai? Gao Hanshun and Gui Jun's faces turned cold. Their judgment was right. The reason why Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could be so fearless was because they had a helper in the crowd. In the next moment, under everyone's astonished gazes, a black and a white figure rapidly enlarged in front of everyone's eyes. Xiao Bai quickly came to Di Beichun's side, while Xiao Hei went to help Xiren and Shangwan Yingying. These two figures seemed to have appeared out of thin air. When everyone saw these two demonic beasts, they could not help but be dumbfounded. Damn, where did these two contract beasts come from? They appeared out of thin air. What the hell is this thing? I've never seen such demonic beasts before. After Bai Shi, everyone was once again stunned by the contract beasts of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. They had always thought that there were only contract beasts. Who knew that there was not only one contract beast, but 3 contract beasts? Chapter 3307. In such an anxious situation, with the addition of Xiao Hei, the pressure on Wen Xiren and Shangwan Yingying instantly lessened by quite a bit. After all, with 2 people and a beast attacking together, even if the opponent's cultivation was higher than theirs, they would definitely be flustered. After Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai attacked, the crowd realized that the 2 contracted beasts that had appeared later had cultivation levels of the Purple Realm level 5. Gulp. The surrounding cultivators could not help but gulp. Normally, contracted beasts that could reach the Purple Realm were already extremely rare. Who would have thought that 3 of them would appear at this moment? How could they not be surprised? At this moment, the crowd only felt that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3 were simply abnormal. How difficult was it to find an inheritor of the Blood Refining Tower? Now, 2 of them had appeared at once. How difficult was it to cultivate contracted beasts that were above the Purple Realm? Now, 3 of them had appeared at once. These things that were extremely difficult in the eyes of ordinary people. Why was it so easy for Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3? Could it be that they did not live in the same place? When Gao Hanshun realized that there was another Purple Realm level 5 demonic beast in front of him, his face was as black as the bottom of a pot. It turned out that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other 3's helpers were not cultivators at all. but two contracted beasts that had been hiding all this time. If they did not understand why Lu Jiangang's martial technique was suddenly interrupted before, they now understood after seeing Xiao He and Xiao Bai. They were probably ambushed by Xiao He and Xiao Bai. In fact, none of them had noticed the existence of Xiao He and Xiao Bai before this. Xiao He and Xiao Bai were also showing off their invincible might at this moment. How could they miss out on such a rare opportunity to fight? Their original cultivation had not yet caught up with Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. However, when Di Beichun was torturing them in the oceanic world, he had also tormented them, so they had broken through just like that. After hearing Gao Hanshun and Gue Jun's warning, Lu Jiangang knew that danger was approaching. He immediately wanted to stand up, but unfortunately, his brain was still in a violent concussion. His vision was blurry, and he couldn't see the scene in front of him clearly. Bang! The seven-color glazed pagoda came crashing down on Lu Jiangang like a mountain. Lu Jiangang could only rely on his instincts to retreat. However, how could he compare to Bailey Hongzhuang in terms of control? An earth-shattering sound rang out, and the entire ground exploded as if it had suffered a heavy blow. Gravel flew everywhere, and smoke and dust filled the air. Just like that, Lu Jiangang's figure was enveloped by the seven-colored light. Then, the scattered smoke and dust made it impossible for everyone to see what had happened. Bailey Hongzhuang also took a few steps back. She was very clear about the power of the seven-colored glazed pagoda. If she did not retreat, she would be easily affected by the energy. Jiangang. Seeing that Lu Jiangang was engulfed by the seven-colored light, Gao Hanshun and Gue Jun, who were blocked and could not rescue him, screamed at the top of their lungs. Their eyes were bloodshot, as if they could not believe what was happening in front of them. Ever since the three of them came to Penglai Island, they had become sworn brothers. For so many years, even if they were not biological brothers, they had always treated each other as their own brothers. This brotherhood was real. Chapter 3308. All of you deserve to die. Gao Hanshun felt as if his entire being was about to be consumed by anger. His gaze towards Di Beichun and the rest was filled with murderous intent. He could not wait to cut Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest into 1,000 pieces. His two younger brothers had died at the hands of these four people. Now, his sworn brother's fate was unknown. This series of events had long enraged him to the extreme. Big brother, we must avenge Jiangang. Gue Jun roared angrily. Even when the heaven-shaking faction that they had wholeheartedly created was gradually declining, he had never felt so upset. However, Lu Jiangang had met with an accident right in front of him. This had truly crossed his bottom line. A surging murderous intent spread throughout his heart. He must kill these people with his own hands. Otherwise, he would not be a human. Kill them. Gao Hanshun's gaze was cold. Now that they did not know whether Lu Jiangang was dead or alive, they knew very well that even if Lu Jiangang was still alive, he would most likely be half-crippled. However, in the face of Gao Hanshun's and the other's surging murderous intent, Di Beichun and the rest were indifferent. At least until now, all the developments had gone according to their plan. Without Lu Jiangang, their chances of winning were greater. Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze was fixed on Lu Jiangang's position. She wanted Lu Jiangang to be dead for sure. As the smoke and dust gradually dispersed, a huge hole appeared in everyone's line of sight. Looking at the hole, everyone could not help but gasp. Back when Bailey Hongzhuang had used the seven-colored glazed pagoda, they had already known that the power of this martial skill was not simple. However, at this moment, they could not help but gasp in amazement when they saw the destructive power. It was simply too shocking. Behind the huge hole, a figure was lying in a pool of blood. Lu Jiangang's figure was already extremely miserable. His bones seemed to have been broken inch by inch, and his face was as pale as a sheet of paper. He lay there, unable to move at all. If it were not for the fact that they could still vaguely sense some of his aura, everyone would have thought that he was already dead. However, even if there was still a trace of his aura, Lu Jiangang was no different from a dead person. It was impossible to recover from such a serious injury. What was the difference between becoming a cripple and dying for people like them? Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze fell on Lu Jiangang. In the next second, she threw out a knife in her hand. Then, she walked to Di Beichen's side without looking. One problem had been solved. There were two more problems left. They would solve them one by one. Lu Jiangang, who originally had a trace of life left, had completely lost his life after being hit by Bailey Hongzhuang's flying dagger. At the moment of his death, he couldn't even say a word. This scene clearly agitated Gao Hanshun and Gue Jun. Their brother had actually died just like that. It was really hard for them to accept. Di Bei, I will kill you with my own hands. Gao Hanshun glared at Bailey Hongzhuang. His cruel words came out from between his teeth. Everyone could feel the strong, murderous intent clearly. Looking at Gao Hanshun, whose face was red with anger, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled slightly. What a coincidence. I also want to kill you with my own hands. Chapter 3309. Sensing Gao Hanshun's attack, a serious look flashed across Bailey Hongzhuang's face. She had never thought of underestimating Gao Hanshun. He was a Purple Realm 8th level cultivator, and he was currently unleashing all of his power. The slightest mistake could cost her life. The moment Gao Hanshun made his move, Di Beichen also charged forward. After the previous exchange, he had realized how terrifying Gao Hanshun was. His power was not just a little bit stronger than Lu Jiangong's. Bailey Hongzhuang was obviously unable to deal with him alone. In an instant, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen joined forces to deal with Gao Hanshun. Bai Shi and Xiao Bai took the opportunity to launch a sneak attack, surrounding Gao Hanshun from all sides. However, Gao Hanshun was indeed a powerful cultivator. Even under their siege, Gao Hanshun still maintained a certain advantage. Tyrannical and dazzling martial skills continuously exploded. Surging and turbulent origin power fluctuations spread out with them as the center. The speed of the battle was even more dazzling. The more Zihua and Long Yanwei watched this battle, the more astonished they felt. Yanwei, did you see clearly when Lu Jiangang was ambushed? Zihua slowly asked. Long Yanwei thought for a moment and said, if I'm not wrong, those two contracted beasts should have the ability to change their size. Previously, Xiao He and Xiao Bai had expanded too quickly. Therefore, many people thought that they had appeared out of thin air. However, Zihua and Long Yanwei's eyesight was not comparable to that of ordinary people. Their sharp eyes had noticed that Xiao He and Xiao Bai had expanded in an instant. It was because of this that no one had noticed when they had launched a sneak attack on Lu Jiangang. Not to mention the other cultivators. Even the two of them did not see clearly what had happened during the sneak attack. However, after what had happened later, they gradually came to their senses. This was where the problem lay. My thoughts are the same as yours. Izihuan nodded. I've never seen a demonic beast with such a special ability. Using it for a sneak attack is simply impossible to guard against. Even Izihua had no choice but to admit that if he had been ambushed without any knowledge of the situation, then that would be very scary. Yanwei, do you know what species these two contracted beasts are? I feel that these two fellows are even more unique than the Beast King you mentioned. A look of doubt surfaced on Izihua's face. He had never heard of such a demonic beast before. As Izihua's voice fell, Long Yanwei's expression became somewhat complicated. He had been thinking about this problem since the moment Xiao He and Xiao Bai revealed themselves. However, after thinking for a long time, he had never seen such a demonic beast in the ancient records. Zihua, I suddenly feel that I don't know enough about demonic beasts. Long Yanwei could not help but say. Izihua looked at Long Yanwei in astonishment. After all, Long Yanwei was widely recognized as the contract master who understood demonic beasts the best. Many cultivators' contracted beasts had come from Long Yanwei's hands. However, Long Yanwei had now said that he did not know enough about demonic beasts. If this were to spread, no one would believe it. However, Izihua understood why Long Yanwei said so. Chapter 33:10. I'm getting more and more interested in these little fellas. Long Yanwei's smile widened. The value of these four young fellas was too high. Even if he could not defeat Gao Hanshun and Gue Jun in the end, he had to save these four little fellas. However, according to his judgment, he did not need to do anything. These four little fellas could solve the problem in front of them. Hearing Long Yanwei's words, Easy Hua could not help but laugh. Looks like we have the same idea. Long Yanwei nodded. It's rare to come across such good seedlings. It would be a waste if we don't recruit them. Gao Hanshun, who was in a rage, used all his skills. He did not care about the loss of his primary energy at all. He only wanted to take the lives of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Gao Hanshun's combat power increased exponentially. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen were careful, they could not help but be injured in the storm of attacks. Bang! Bailey Hongzhuang was hit by Gao Hanshun's attack, and her figure was pushed back dozens of meters, her face instantly pale. Di Beichen had already been injured in the fight with Gao Hanshun. This battle was quite a burden for him. Bai Shi and Xiao Bai were also injured. Although they hated the guy in front of them, they had to admit that this guy's strength was not simple. The strength of the Jintian faction's leader is indeed well-deserved. His combat power is really powerful. Originally, everyone thought that the scales of victory were tilted towards Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. However, now that Gao Hanshun's true combat power had exploded, they realized that Gao Hanshun's combat power was far from what they thought. No wonder he could develop the Jintian faction to this stage. However, it still fell in the end. If this continues, Di Bei and the others will be in danger. Bailey Hongzhuang's face darkened. Beichun, it's not a good idea to continue like this. Hearing that, Di Beichun nodded slightly. Indeed, we have to think of another way. His combat power is too strong. However, he won't be able to hold on for too long. We can't use a sneak attack. I'm afraid the only thing we can use is poison. Bailey Hongzhuang thought about it. Other than this method, there was really no other way. If this continued, they would be seriously injured by Gao Hanshun soon. This was obviously not a good idea. Di Beichun and Bailey Hongzhuang looked at each other, and the two immediately made a decision. In the next second, both of their hands quickly flipped over, and the yuan power in their bodies immediately surged out. It was obviously impossible to directly use poison, as that would immediately be discovered. With Gao Hanshun's strength, it was impossible for him to fall for it. However, if the poison needles were mixed into the attack, the chances of success will be much higher. No matter what, they had to give it a try. Seeing that Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang were using their martial skills together, Gao Hanshun was not afraid. He was confident that no matter how hard Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen tried, they would not be able to change the outcome. They would die in his hands in the end. He could not help but regret. If he had known, he would not have given Di Beichen the chance to waste time. If he could have ended the battle quickly, Lu Jiangang would not have died. This was all his fault. Chapter 33:11. Xiren, Shangwan Yingying, and Xiao He were working together to deal with Gue Jun, but the pressure was not as great as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichuan's. This was because Gue Jun was the weakest among the three Gao Hanshun brothers. Even though Gue Jun was currently filled with rage and had used everything he had, Gue Jun was still unable to break through any of their defenses. However, they would not be able to deal with Gue Jun in a short period of time. When Gue Jun discovered that Gao Hanshun was suppressing Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun, he was no longer in a hurry. As long as Gao Hanshun could defeat the two fellows with the blood aura field, they would be the final victors of this battle. The only regret was that Lu Jiangang had died in this battle, leaving only the two of them. Xiren, Di Beixian, and Di Beixian naturally discovered Gue Jun's intention of stalling for time. They wanted to heavily injure Gue Jun, but Gue Jun was like a fish in water, preventing them from breaking through. Every dog has its day. They were the ones who were speechless at Gue Jun's stalling for time. The scales of victory gradually tilted towards Gao Hanshun and Di Beichun. Everyone only felt that it would be a pity if geniuses like Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun really died at Gao Hanshun's hands. After all, who knew how many years it took for a successor to appear in the Bloodground Abyss? Now that two had appeared with great difficulty, it was a great loss for them to die just like that. If this continues, the two of them might be in danger. Zihua raised his eyebrows slightly as his gaze fell on the injured Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. Hearing this, Long Yanwei smiled and said, "No one will know the final result until the final step." From the looks of it, these two little fellows seemed to already have a plan. Zihua was rather surprised by Long Yanwei's confidence. He immediately smiled. "I'm also rather curious about what the two of them can come up with." Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's martial skills were quickly completed. At the same time, Gao Hanchuan's martial skill was also completed. In comparison, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's martial arts skills were not simple. However, Gao Hanshun was a Purple Realm 8th level cultivator, so he was much stronger than them both in terms of strength and control. As a result, Gao Hanchuan's martial skill was extremely powerful, while Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's martial skills were much weaker. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were not surprised. In fact, this was within their expectations. "Go!" Bailey Hongzhuang shouted coldly, and a 7-colored glazed pagoda quickly fell towards Gao Hanchuan's direction. Di Beichun's actions were extremely similar to Bailey Hongzhuang's. The opponent's martial skill was strong enough, but the martial skill that the two of them displayed together was not weak either. Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's confident looks, Gao Hanshun snorted coldly. When the difference in strength was extremely obvious, no matter how many martial skills the opponent had, it would not change the outcome. "I'll send you to accompany Jian Gang to the grave." Gao Hanshun shouted angrily. Then, he waved his hand, and his martial skill immediately attacked Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. However, Gao Hanshun, who was full of confidence, did not notice that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's martial skill included several silver needles that contained deadly poison. Chapter 33:12. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion rang out, deafening and resounding through the clouds. The entire world seemed to tremble along with this earth-shattering explosion. Bang! 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 The explosive sounds of elemental energy colliding continued to ring out, and the flat and hard ground cracked inch by inch under the shockwaves. Gravel flew everywhere, and smoke and dust spread out like a mushroom cloud, completely enveloping Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. No one could see clearly what was going on. The spectating practitioners all took a few steps back and used their elemental energy to protect their bodies. Otherwise, they would be caught off guard by the shockwaves and be injured. Guei Jun, Wenziren, and the others who were fighting at the side couldn't help but stop what they were doing when they saw this scene. Their gazes fell on the smoke and dust. With such a huge shockwave, they were all very concerned about their teammates. Most importantly, the outcome of this battle was very likely to be decided. When Ziren and Shangwan Yingying looked at each other, and a trace of worry flashed in their eyes at the same time. They had underestimated Gao Hanchuan's strength. With Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's combined strength, it wouldn't be a problem to deal with a Purple Realm 8th level practitioner. However, Gao Hanshun wasn't an ordinary Purple Realm 8th level practitioner. His combat strength was probably comparable to a Purple Realm 9th level practitioner. It was precisely because of this that they had fallen into such a situation. Otherwise, everything would have been extremely smooth. Now, they couldn't judge the final outcome. They had never thought that Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun would fall in this battle. If Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were defeated, then the only thing they could do was to bring Bailey Hongzhuang and Shangwan Yingying away quickly. Revenge was a dish best served cold. As long as they escaped today, what was the point of revenge in the future? For a moment, both Guei Jun's side and Ziren's side were extremely nervous. As the smoke and dust gradually dispersed, a crater of several hundred meters in size appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The crater where Lu Jiangang fell was also affected by the energy impact. Everyone took a look and saw that Lu Jiangang had probably turned into a cloud of blood mist and dissipated in the air. Not even his bones were left. In his line of sight, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun were both lying on the ground. Their clothes were dyed red with blood. Their faces had turned deathly pale, and they were panting heavily. Di Beichun tried to stand up with his hands on the ground, but he found that all the strength in his body seemed to have been squeezed out. A few of his ribs had been broken by the impact just now, and it was difficult for him to breathe. Bailey Hongzhuang was right next to Di Beichun. Her situation was even worse than Di Beichun's. As soon as she opened her mouth, she spat out a mouthful of blood. The energy impact was simply too powerful. She felt as if her internal organs were about to shift. She felt a burning pain, and every inch of her body was accompanied by immense pain. Bai Shi and Xiao Bai immediately came to Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. They glared fiercely at Gao Hanshan. Gao Hanshan was still standing in the same spot as before. Although he was also injured, he was clearly in a much better state than Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. Seeing this scene, everyone could not help but sigh. The result could not be more obvious. Gao Hanshan won. The two of them were no match for him. Chapter 33:13. After seeing this scene, Gui Jun's face suddenly revealed a joyful smile. As long as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun died and Gao Hanshan came, when Xiren and Shangwan Yingying in front of him could only die. You're finished. Gui Jun grinned and said. When Xiren and Shangwan Yingying's expressions were extremely ugly. Even though they had already guessed this outcome, when this scene really happened, they still found it hard to accept. They didn't expect that they would make a mistake in judgment, causing them to fall into such a situation. When Xiren and Shangwan Yingying looked at each other, and the two immediately made a decision. With a thought, they directly rushed to Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's location. Looking at Xiren and Shangwan Yingying's actions, Gui Jun didn't care. Anyway, the two of them were already dead, so what if they struggled for a while? Bailey Hongzhuang immediately took out healing medicine from her Qinquan bag and gave it to Di Beichun and herself. Their injuries were really bad, but fortunately, it didn't damage their foundation. The two of them stared at Gao Hanshan. They had already used all their means, but the explosion just now was too shocking, and they couldn't see Gao Hanshan's situation clearly. Therefore, they couldn't judge whether Gao Hanshan was hit or not. When Xiren and Shangwan Yingying immediately came to Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun's side and immediately wanted to escape with Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. In their opinion, as long as they could escape a certain distance and hide in Bailey Hongzhuang's chaos ring, they believed that no one would be able to find them. Speaking of which, Bailey Hongzhuang's chaos ring was the reason why they were so fearless. At the same time, Gui Jun also came to Gao Hanshan's side with a smile on his face. At this moment, he wanted to see how Shangwan Yingying and Shangwan Yingying could rescue the seriously injured Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. Beichun, let's go. However, Di Beichun shook his head. His eyes were still locked on Gao Hanshan. Wait. Upon hearing Di Beichun's words, Xiren couldn't help but feel anxious. Why are you still waiting at a time like this? If we wait any longer, we won't even have any hope of leaving. Bailey Hongzhuang locked her gaze on Gao Hanshan. When she noticed the slight bruise on Gao Hanshan's face, her lips slowly curled into a smile. Gao Hanshan had been hit. Shangwan Yingying looked at the smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's face strangely. She couldn't believe it. Now that they were in a terrible situation, how could Bailey Hongzhuang still laugh? What was going on? Hee. Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly chuckled. Even though the pain on her body was still intense, her smile was still as bright as ever. When the crowd saw Bailey Hongzhuang's sudden laughter, their expressions instantly turned strange. What's going on? Gao Hanshan stared fixedly at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun. He never thought that these two fellows would still have a trump card up their sleeves during the battle. Initially, he should have won this battle without a doubt. However, he never thought that the two of them would use the silver needles of reaping life as a martial technique. Under the influence of the energy ripples, he didn't pay much attention. By the time he had reacted, it was already too late. Chapter 33:14. As soon as the silver needle entered his body, he immediately discovered that the silver needle was highly toxic. Thus, he immediately used his origin energy to forcefully expel the poison from his body. However, he was shocked to find that the poison seemed to be able to adhere to his Yuan Li. The more he used his Yuan Li to force it out, the faster the poison circulated in his body. In a short period of time, it had already invaded his body. Under such circumstances, he could only stop the flow of Yuan Li in his body. Otherwise, he would only die if this continued. However, even after he did so, the speed of the poison circulating in his body only slowed down a little. However, it was worsening his body step by step. He didn't know much about poison, but he could determine how powerful this poison was. It could take his life at any time. Di Beichen's lips slowly curled into a devilish smile. It seemed like their plan had succeeded. Bailey Hongzhuang laid down in relief and said to Ziren and Shangwan Yingying, "Beichen and I are temporarily unable to fight. I'll leave the rest of Gui Jun to you guys." Shangwan Yingying and Ziren were stunned when they heard this. However, the two of them quickly reacted. It seemed like the result of this battle wasn't what they saw on the surface. The real winners were Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. Gui Jun also realized that something was wrong at this moment. He couldn't help but ask, "Big brother, what's wrong with you?" However, Gao Hanshun didn't answer Gui Jun at all. Under such circumstances, Gui Jun gradually realized that Gao Hanshun's face had turned purple. His pupils couldn't help but shrink. "Poison! Big brother, you've been poisoned." Gui Jun was completely dumbfounded at this moment. He had never thought that his big brother would actually be poisoned. If that was the case, wouldn't the situation be extremely bad? As soon as Gui Jun finished speaking, the spectating cultivators finally understood the real situation. Suddenly, the way everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen changed. None of them had noticed when Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen had poisoned them. Most importantly, Gao Hanshun was already at the 8th level of the Purple Realm. What kind of poison could cause Gao Hanshun to fall into such a state? Poison had always been something that cultivators were very wary of. However, after reaching such a high level of cultivation, ordinary poison would not be able to affect them at all. However, the poison that Bailey Hongzhuang and Gao Hanshun had used on Gao Hanshun was truly terrifying. Bang! In the next second, Gao Hanshun's figure suddenly fell backward. Gui Jun immediately supported Gao Hanshun, and a panicked look quickly appeared on his face. He shouted loudly, "Big brother, how are you?" Gao Hanshun only looked at Gui Jun, and the purple color on his face became more and more intense. He said, "Highly toxic poison. I'm afraid I won't make it." He had never thought that he would fall into the hands of Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen like this. They were just a few newcomers who had just arrived at Penglai Island from the outside world. How could he fall into their hands again and again? In the end, he even lost his life. He couldn't accept it. However, he knew his own body's condition very well. If he didn't have the antidote, he would die. Obviously, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen would never give him the antidote. Chapter 33:15. At the same time, when Ziren, Shangwan Yingying, Baisher, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai all walked towards Gui Jun, Gao Hanshun could no longer cause any trouble, so it would be a piece of cake for the two of them and the three beasts to deal with Gui Jun. As he watched Ziren and the others approach, Gui Jun's face turned pale. He could not help but ask, "What are you trying to do?" Ziren chuckled. "Do you even need to ask?" A sense of fear rose in Gui Jun's heart. He simply could not imagine that the three of them would lose their lives in the hands of these people. He could not help but feel regret. If he had known this would happen, they would have left immediately after the auction. Then, none of this would have happened. Unfortunately, they had gone through so much trouble to find these fellows. They never thought that they would lose their lives in the process. At the thought of this, Guei-jun did not hesitate to flee towards the back. It was impossible for him to fight them head-on. This was the only way for him to survive. When Xiren had already guessed Guei-jun's thoughts. Therefore, he had immediately chased after Guei-jun the moment he had fled. He would not give him any chance to escape. Everyone could not help but sigh at the sight of this. The reversal of the ending had exceeded everyone's expectations. The show is over. Let's go. A smile appeared on Long Yanwei's face. His judgment had been correct. These two little fellows had left a backup plan. Izihua raised his eyebrows, and a trace of doubt appeared in his eyes. Are we going to leave just like that? Aren't we going to talk to them? Based on their current situation, if we were to approach them rashly, I'm afraid that they would feel hostile towards us. It's better to wait until their injuries have healed before we talk to them. The effect would be better. Long Yanwei smiled. Hearing this, Izihua could not help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen. He nodded. You're right. Xiren and the others had chased after Guei-jun very quickly. This was because Guei-jun no longer had any will to fight. All he wanted to do was to escape. When Xiren and Shangwan Yingying returned, the four of them looked at each other and smiled. They had given it their all. Fortunately, the result was as they had expected. The four of them kept the Cosmos pouches on Gao Hanchuan's team of three. After making sure that they did not leave anything behind, they left the matter to Penglai Island's guards to deal with. Inside the inn, when Xiren and Shangwan Yingying looked at the severely injured Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen, their faces full of worry. How do you feel? Are your injuries serious? Di Beichen waved his hand. A few broken bones and some internal injuries. It's not a big deal. I'll recover after a few days of rest. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. We won't die. However, it's true that we'll need to rest for a while. Looking at Di Beichen and Bailey Hongzhuang's nonchalant expressions, when Xiren and Shangwan Yingying felt helpless. However, they were often injured, so they were already used to it. It seems that we'll have to stay on Penglai Island for a while. You guys should rest first. The two of us will also be going back to rest. Xiren smiled faintly. Although his and Shangwan Yingying's injuries were not as serious as Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichen's, they were still injured. In the next few days, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others stayed in the inn to recuperate until their injuries were completely healed. Chapter 33:16. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three checked Gao Hanchuan's Chinquan bag, but when they saw the things inside, they couldn't help but feel disappointed. Logically speaking, as the three leaders of the heaven-shaking faction, Gao Hanchuan's group should have a lot of wealth, but when they checked, they found that there was nothing valuable inside. There weren't many treasures, and the number of spirit stones was also very small, which was very different from what they had imagined. In any case, they're the leaders of the heaven-shaking faction. I didn't expect that after so many years, they would end up in such a state. TSK. Xiren couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. He originally thought that he had slaughtered 3 little fat sheep, but he didn't expect that they were so poor. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at the things inside the Chinquan bag and couldn't help but say, "It seems that the news we heard before was not wrong at all. The development of the heaven-shaking faction is not as good as before. In order to keep the heaven-shaking faction alive, Gao Hanchuan's group has spent almost all their wealth. A starving camel is still bigger than a horse. The things in this guy's Chinquan bag are not even as much as I am." Shangwan Yingying shrugged her shoulders. She originally had a trace of expectation, but now it seemed that she was thinking too much. Di Beichen took out 2 pieces of the map fragment from Gao Hanchuan's Chinquan bag, and a smile slowly appeared on his face. "Although we didn't get anything else, at least this map fragment is still here. This is already the most important thing. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two looked at each other and smiled. The reason why they took the risk to deal with Gao Hanchuan's group was because of this map fragment. The fourth map fragment is really in Gao Hanchuan's hands. Our judgment was not wrong at all. Xiren's eyes were brimming with pride. His divine prophecy was so accurate. Bailey Hongzhuang took out the other two pieces of the map from her arms. They found that Gao Hanchun had already dealt with these pieces of the map, so the four pieces could be directly pieced together. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three pieced the four map fragments together, a surprising scene occurred. They saw that the pattern on the map seemed to flow and change in an instant. The mountain range constantly squirmed, becoming completely different from what they had seen before. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and Di Beichun couldn't help but look at each other. It seemed that the map fragment was more complicated than they had imagined. How on earth was this made? I've never heard of such a wriggling map. Shang Ying's eyes widened. This scene was beyond her knowledge. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two's expressions were no better than Shang Ying's. They had never heard of such a scene before. Soon, the map fragments merged into one, as if it had never been torn apart. Facing such a completed map, everyone was a little dumbfounded. Looks like Beichen and your team's luck isn't ordinary. There's an 80 to 90% chance that there's a huge treasure behind this. Xiren said. Immediately, the four of them moved closer to the map to take a look. They wanted to know where the map was pointing to. However, after taking a look, the four of them were still confused. The map fragment we saw before clearly pointed to the outside world, but I've never heard of any of the locations on this map. Chapter 33:17. Do you guys know where this is? Di Beichun and the other two looked at it carefully for a while before shaking their heads. We don't know. I've never seen any of the names on this map before. Also, this terrain doesn't seem to be similar to the Shangxian continent. Could it be that this map is referring to Penglai Island? Xiren was confused. Di Beichun shook his head. There is an ocean drawn on this map, but it doesn't match the terrain of Penglai Island. There is no island drawn on this map at all. Then where is this place? Could it be the extreme north or the extreme east? Perhaps there is something similar to Penglai Island there? Shangguan Yingying said whimsically. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang's deep black phoenix eyes flashed with a light of thought. This is not impossible, but the possibility is not high. As far as I know, other than the extreme south where there is an existence like Penglai Island, there doesn't seem to be anything special about the other places. So it seems that it will be very difficult for us to find the treasure on this map. Xiren sighed. He was originally full of interest to search for the treasure. He didn't expect that even with a map, they couldn't even find a place on the map. At this time, Bailey Hongzhuang suddenly noticed a row of small words at the bottom right of the map. Without breaking through to the purple realm and above, it is impossible to know the location of this place. Bailey Hongzhuang read out these words, but the confusion in her eyes became even more intense. Why is this place related to cultivation? Di Beichen picked up the map and looked at the row of kids carefully. His expression became complicated. Could it be that different cultivation levels lead to different maps? After all, when they first saw the map, they felt that the terrain on it was very familiar. Now that the four pieces of the map were pieced together, they were not familiar with it at all. If that was the case, then perhaps the map they were looking at now was not the same as the real map. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded and said, maybe that is the case, but this map is really mysterious. If that's the case, then we will know when we break through to the purple realm and above. Xiren's eyes lit up. Compared to the hopeless situation before, at least they could see hope now. This was very good. It's useless to think about this now. We can only wait until we break through to the purple realm and above. Shangguan Yingying spread her hands. She originally wanted to search for the treasure right now, but she didn't expect that there was a minimum requirement. With their current cultivation levels, they couldn't even determine the location of the map. And isn't the most important thing now Bailey Hongzhuang quickly figured it all out, a light smile appearing on her face. She had to make a trip back after the Demon Tower. At least she didn't have to let her family continue to worry. If her family was interested, it would be a good choice for them to come to Penglai Island to cultivate together. After all, the resources here could help cultivators improve even more. Chapter 33:18. Beichun, you and Hong Zhuang's injuries are almost healed, right? When Xiren asked, if there are no problems, we can set off for the magic tower. Deep Beichun nodded. We are fine now. We can set off at any time. Then let's set off later. We have stayed here long enough. Okay. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three packed up their things, they were ready to set off for Penglai Island. However, just as they were about to leave, a figure blocked their path. Seeing the sudden appearance of this unfamiliar figure, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two could not help but frown. They did not know where this uninvited guest came from, and they could not tell whether he was a friend or a foe. Are you all preparing to leave Penglai Island? Long Yanwei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three who were heading to the dock, and a kind smile appeared on his face. Ever since he saw the battle between Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three that day, he had already made up his mind to find a way to keep the four of them in Penglai Palace. It would be a real pity if such a talent were to slip away right in front of him like this. However, the four of them were seriously injured at that time, so he did not disturb them. Today, he rushed over as soon as he heard the news that the four of them had left the inn. He did not expect them to be preparing to leave Penglai Island. Hearing Long Yanwei's question, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's eyes could not help but show a hint of vigilance. They had been staying in the inn for the past few days and had not come out. Today, they had just left, and this person had come looking for them. He must have been paying attention to them. Otherwise, he would not be so clear about their situation. Who are you? Why are you looking for us? Di Beichen asked. Noticing the vigilant look on Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's faces, Long Yanwei could not help but smile and explain, Don't worry, I have no ill intentions. However, Long Yanwei's explanation was not convincing to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Let me introduce myself. I am Long Yanwei from Penglai Palace. The purpose of my visit this time is to recruit you into Penglai Palace. As soon as these words came out, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three could not help but be shocked. Their vigilance weakened a little, but it still did not dissipate. I happened to see your previous battle. To be honest, I admire geniuses like you. If you can join Penglai Palace, you will definitely have a better development. I wonder if you're interested in joining Penglai Palace? Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at each other. According to their understanding, there were many cultivators who wanted to become a member of Penglai Palace. As long as one became a cultivator of Penglai Palace, one would undoubtedly have an additional layer of protection when walking on Penglai Island. Ordinary cultivators would not dare to find trouble with Penglai Palace's disciples. If they are not, I Beichen Palace they are. Of course, there are. They are? There they are. They go out. Them. Edition. I don't think we should go. Di Beichun thought for a moment and said their decision. Chapter 33:19. Long Yanwei was originally very confident that as long as he extended an olive branch, no one would refuse. However, Di Beichun had only considered it for a few seconds before rejecting it. Rejected? Even Long Yanwei could not come back to his senses for a moment. The Penglai Palace was the strongest force on Penglai Island. Although it was usually called the Three Great Forces along with the 100 Flowers Gate and the Crimson Moon Sect, everyone knew that the Penglai Palace was the most powerful existence among them. One could tell from the fact that the Penglai Island and the Penglai Palace had the same name. Usually, many cultivators would sharpen their minds to join the Penglai Palace. If someone was willing to extend an olive branch, everyone would be grateful. However, He had personally come to recruit the other party and was directly rejected. He looked at the four little fellows in front of him and saw that the four little fellows had calm expressions. They did not reject an excellent development at all. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two supported Di Beichen's approach. Currently, they were not in the mood to join other forces. After the trip to the demonic tower, they would have to return. As for when they would return to Penglai Island, even they did not know. At this moment, they would not be able to do anything at all if they joined. It was better not to waste time. Are you guys really not joining? Long Yanwei could not help but ask again. Di Beichen nodded. We really don't plan to join. Facing the other party's expressionless face, Long Yanwei was speechless. Could it be that their Penglai Palace's position on Penglai Island had been declining during this period of time? Why? After thinking about it, Long Yanwei could not help but ask the reason. He really could not think of a reason for the other party's rejection. Originally, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three still had some doubts about Long Yanwei's true identity. However, looking at Long Yanwei's expression at this moment, they no longer doubted him. Speaking of which, they knew in their hearts that they had indeed rejected an excellent opportunity. However, with their current situation, they had no choice but to do so. We need to make a trip back. Di Beichen did not intend to explain. However, after seeing Long Yanwei's sincere appearance, he still gave the reason. However, after listening to Di Beichen's words, Long Yanwei did not recover for a moment. Make a trip back? To the outside world? Not bad. You don't plan to stay on Penglai Island anymore. Long Yanwei frowned. If the other party did not plan to stay on Penglai Island, it was normal for them to reject him. With your current cultivation, you can only develop better if you stay on Penglai Island. Why are you in such a hurry to go back? When we first came to Penglai Island, we left without saying goodbye. Our family must be very worried about our current situation, so we decided to go back. After Long Yanwei found out the reason, he was completely speechless. Just because of such a reason, the other party refused to join the Penglai Palace? No one would believe such a thing even if he told them about it. As long as you join the Penglai Palace, our palace can send messages on your behalf. Therefore, this is not a problem for you at all. Moreover, you can save a lot of time, Long Yanwei said. Chapter 33:20. What do you think? Long Yanwei could not help but ask again when he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three's expressions were slightly relaxed. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three shook their heads again. We plan to explore the demonic tower. If we join the Penglai Palace, I'm afraid we won't have the chance to go. They did not know much about the Penglai Palace, but they knew that the disciples of the Hundred Flowers Gate basically stayed on Hundred Flowers Island. Unless invited, they would not leave at all. Thinking about it, if they joined the Penglai Palace, they would have to stay on Penglai Island forever. Compared to that, freedom was more important to them. I think you don't know much about the Penglai Palace. Long Yanwei laughed involuntarily. We, the Penglai Palace, have never restricted the freedom of our disciples. Every disciple of the Penglai Palace has freedom. Whether they choose to stay in the palace to cultivate or go out to train, we will not stop them. In this regard, we are the same as the Crimson Moon sect. Only the disciples of the Hundred Flowers Gate usually stay on Penglai Island. We encourage our disciples to go out to train and fight the sea monsters. The reason why the disciples of the Hundred Flowers Gate do not leave is not because their freedom is restricted. It is because they have improved a lot by staying on Hundred Flowers Island, so most of the disciples are unwilling to leave. Hearing Long Yanwei's explanation, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three finally understood. So that was the case. Previously, they had been in seclusion and did not know much about the three major factions. That was why they had such a misunderstanding. I see. However, even though Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three knew this, they did not have the thought of joining the Penglai Palace. This was because joining the Penglai Palace did not seem to bring them any benefits. Although becoming a disciple of the Penglai Palace would make them more famous and they could receive a certain amount of cultivation resources every month. These were not very attractive to them. With Bailey Hongzhuang's ability, she could obtain spiritual stones in the demonic tower faster. Long Yanwei felt a little helpless when he saw that Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three were still unmoved. Originally, he thought that he had shown enough sincerity by coming personally to recruit Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. If it were any other cultivator, they would have agreed immediately. However, judging from the current situation, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others probably didn't even know who he was. Under such circumstances, he naturally couldn't introduce himself with great fanfare, lest he be suspected of blowing his own trumpet. If the other party was just a cultivator with average potential, he would have given up recruiting him with such an attitude. After all, the dignity of Penglai Palace was not to be trifled with. However, when he thought about how Bailey Hongzhuang and Deep Beichun were the inheritors of the Bloodground Abyss and the three special monsters, he felt that he could not let them leave just like that. At the very least, he had to find out whether Baishur was the Beast King or not, and what kind of monsters the two monsters that could change their sizes were. He had been flipping through books these days. However, he had flipped through almost all the books, but could not find an introduction to the three monsters. This made him very curious. If Senior has nothing else, then we will leave. Di Beichun cupped his hands at Long Yanwei and immediately prepared to leave with Bailey Hongzhuang and the other two. Chapter 33:21. As long as you join Penglai Palace, I'll give you a demon pet egg that's suitable for you. How about it? Long Yanwei saw that Deep Beichun and the other three had made up their minds not to join. After thinking about it, he couldn't help but throw out a heavy bomb. If the cultivators who knew Long Yanwei heard this, they would be pleasantly surprised. Because Long Yanwei was a famous contract master on Penglai Island, he had a lot of demon pet eggs in his hands, and they were all of high quality. Usually, many people wanted to ask for a demon pet egg from Long Yanwei, but other than the disciples of Penglai Palace, no matter how others begged, it was useless. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three heard this, their eyes couldn't help but light up. Demon pet eggs? This wasn't something that could be seen often. They didn't expect Long Yanwei to say such a tempting condition. A demon pet egg that's suitable for us? Di Beichun looked at Long Yanwei. He didn't know what kind of suitable Long Yanwei was talking about. Demon pet eggs, with their ability, it wasn't that they couldn't get it. It was just that it was very difficult to get a demon pet egg that was suitable for them. If it wasn't suitable for their situation, then it was just a waste of the contract opportunity. Seeing that Deep Beichun and the others' faces finally changed, he couldn't help but nod and said, "That's right, it's a demon pet egg that's suitable for you. The contract beast that a cultivator of the 5th level of the Purple Realm needs must have a lot of development potential. If you just rely on yourself to find it, then it's very difficult, but I can do it." Speaking of this, Long Yanwei's face suddenly revealed a strong sense of confidence. On Penglai Island, other people didn't have the confidence to say this, but he did. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at each other. They really didn't expect that it would be such a proposal. Really? Shangwan Yingying couldn't help but ask. All along, she had hoped to have a contract beast that belonged to her. Especially after seeing Bailey Hongzhuang's 3 contract beasts, she was extremely envious. This kind of contract beast could not only accompany her on normal days, but also be an expert in battle. It could undoubtedly increase her battle strength by a lot. Unfortunately, she never found such a contract beast. Long Yanwei nodded. "If you don't believe me, you can ask around for my name. I'm a contract master of Penglai Palace. Many cultivators in Penglai Palace got their contract beast from me. You don't know anything about me. I don't think you will believe everything I say. Why don't you ask around today and go to the Penglai Palace to find me tomorrow?" Long Yanwei had a faint smile on his face. From the expressions of these 4 little fellows, he knew that these 4 little fellows were already tempted. Presumably, no one would be able to refuse such a condition. Although it would break the rules of Penglai Palace, with his status, it was not a big deal to break it a little. Without waiting for Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three to answer, Long Yanwei had already handed a token to Di Beichun and said, "Tomorrow, take this and come to Penglai Palace to find me." With that, Long Yanwei left. He was willing to give these four little fellows some time. After Long Yanwei left, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others couldn't help but look at each other. Their minds couldn't wrap their heads around it. Chapter 33:22. When Zyra nodded with a stupefied expression, that seems to be the case. With our current strength, the level of the demon pet egg that we need is not an ordinary high level. He actually said that he would get to us? Bailey Hongzhuang was a bit incredulous. She was also a contract master, so she naturally knew the value of this demon pet egg. The higher the level of the demon pet egg, the higher the difficulty of the contract. Back then, the few demon beasts that she helped to contract were not high level, so she was able to complete the contract. If the level was high, with her ability at that time, she would not be able to complete the contract. However, if this Long Yanwei was able to seal a demon beast of this level, it could be seen that Long Yanwei's ability in this area was not ordinary. Di Beichun's eyes were also filled with doubt. This feeling was like a pie that fell from the sky and was suddenly hit by good luck. However, with their usual style, they did not believe that there would be such a good thing. Why do we care so much about him? Won't we know if we ask the others? Xiao Hei's eyes flashed with excitement. If Di Beichun and the others could have contracted beasts, then their contracted beast team would increase again. If a few more little guys came, they would have something to bully. From the attitude of this Long Yanwei, we can see that his identity should not be simple. If we casually ask around, I'm afraid that many people will know. Xiao Bai also spoke out. Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at each other. Just as Xiao Hei and Xiao Bai said, there was no point in them thinking too much here. This was something that could be found out as long as they understood it. Immediately, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three gave up the idea of leaving Penglai Island. If they missed such a good opportunity, it would be a pity. When the four of them returned to the inn and asked the waiter about Long Yanwei, the waiter's face could not help but be filled with shock. "Guests, you actually don't know Master Long?" Di Beichun nodded. "We are newcomers to Penglai Island, so we don't know much about this place. We just happened to hear Master Long's name today. I hope you can introduce him to us." After hearing Di Beichun say that he was a newcomer to Penglai Island, the waiter revealed an understanding expression. "So that's how it is. Otherwise, I was wondering why you guys hadn't heard of Master Long's name in Penglai Island." The attendant smiled awkwardly as if he was apologetic for his exaggerated attitude earlier. Master Long is the contract master of the Penglai Palace. Many cultivators have sharpened their minds to join the Penglai Palace. Master Long was one of the reasons why the Crimson Moon sect couldn't compare to the Penglai Palace for so many years. This was because Master Long had a lot of demon pet eggs in his hands. Moreover, these demon pet eggs were of very high levels. As long as you become a disciple of the Penglai Palace, you may be able to obtain a demon pet egg. This is the most attractive part. However, not every disciple of the Penglai Palace can have it. The waiter immediately introduced a lot of things about Long Yanwei to Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three. Until this moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three finally understood why Long Yanwei revealed such a shocked expression when he knew that they chose to refuse. Chapter 33:23. After the attendant left, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh out loud. I'm afraid that Long Yanwei didn't even think that the four of us are real laymen. We haven't even heard of his name. Shang Waningying laughed like a flower. Now that I think of Long Yanwei's expression before, I find it very interesting. Haha. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded. She also felt that it was very funny. A big shot appeared in front of them just like that. But the four of them didn't know it all. Thinking about it, any big shot who encountered such a situation would be very helpless. They wouldn't even have the slightest chance to show their status. In that case, Long Yanwei can really give us suitable demon pet eggs. This is a very rare opportunity. Di Beichen's face showed a touch of seriousness. Long Yanwei had the entire Penglai Palace as his backing. This foundation was naturally not something that an ordinary person could compare with. If it were them, it would be extremely difficult to find a contract beast that was suitable for them. Now that such a good opportunity was in front of them, it would be a pity to give it up. Since the Penglai Palace won't restrict our freedom, why don't we join the Penglai Palace? There's no harm in it anyway. Xiren's eyes flashed with interest. He had the idea of not taking advantage of a bastard. If he missed this opportunity, then it would really be the wrath of the heavens and the resentment of the people. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. If you can have your own contract beast, as long as you train it well, the speed of its improvement will be very fast. This was an opportunity to increase the overall strength. A contract beast was the most loyal partner of a cultivator. This was definitely worth it. It seems that we all have the same idea. Di Beichen glanced at everyone and then smiled. Since the Penglai Palace can help us pass this news back, then we might as well let the people of the Penglai Palace help us. Anyway, as long as they pass the news that we are safe and sound, everyone can rest assured. Xiren said. Bailey Hongzhuang thought for a moment. With their current situation, as long as their family knew that they were safe, there was indeed no need to rush back. After all, cultivating here was faster for them to improve. When we go to the Penglai Palace tomorrow, we will ask this question again. If we can bring the Chinquan bag back, it will undoubtedly be the best. Ever since they came to the Penglai Island and saw that everyone was using spirit stones to cultivate, Bailey Hongzhuang wanted to bring the spirit stones she earned back. Although she only had a few 100,000 spirit stones, it was enough for Lan Yunxiao and the others to cultivate for a while. The cultivators of Penglai Island were so strong that they posed a threat to the outside world. However, most of the cultivators of Penglai Island only stayed here and had no intention of going out. Qian's is Qian's and the Qian plan. Qian's is Qian's face. Now that their problems have been solved, it would be best if their family members could also improve their strength. The next day, Bailey Hongzhuang and the other three went to Penglai Palace early after making a decision. You're tuning into the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.